2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Delusions of Grandeur. I am your host, David Streggy, and here in the room with me, I have my good friends, Boris. Hello.
Hello.
My good friend, Kroll.
Yo.
And my fiance, Tammy.
Hello.
So, welcome back to the show. And so we decided to go on about a film called Star Wars, which was filmed in 1977, directed by George Lucas. And it stars, well, Kroll, why don't you tell us a little bit about who actually starred in this movie?
Well, in this movie, we have a new actor called Mark Hamill at the time. We have Carrie Fisher. We have well-known actor Harrison Ford. Then we have Sir Alec Guinness, actual knight in England. Then we have Kenny Baker, Anthony Daniels, and Peter Mayhew.
We also have James Earl Jones, who voices Darth Vader, and Peter Drowls. Is that
Prowse.
his name?
Prowse.
Who actually is just the stand-in uniform of Darth Vader. But why don't I tell you what IMDb says about the film, and then we'll go into our first impressions of the film. So Luke Skywalker joins forces with a Jedi Knight, a cocky pilot, a Wookiee, and 2 droids to save the galaxy from the Empire's world-destroying battle station, while also attempting to rescue Princess Leia from the mysterious Darth Vader, which is very vague. But why don't we go into first impressions? And let's start with you, Kroll. What was your was this a first time watch for you?
No, I have seen Star Wars. I would guess very close to 100 times. People exaggerate when they say things, and sometimes they'll say I've seen it a million times, whatever. But to say I've seen it close to 100 is probably pretty accurate. I absolutely love this movie. Like I was saying before we were on air, this is not just a movie. It's not just a franchise. It's almost a way of life for me. I've read books. I've watched TV shows, merchandise. I've had cereal. I used to have bedclothes, sheets, curtains, you name it. I had it for Star Wars. I have a lamp now. I have cups. It's huge for me. So definitely not the first time. And every time I see it, I absolutely love it. And it's just great. It's absolutely beautifully well done, and one of my favorite movies of all time.
Okay. Now, you actually went to the theater to see this first one, correct?
Yes, 1977. I was 4 years old, and believe it or not, I do remember sitting in the theater, my Uncle Carl, which I believe is the only time he's ever taken me to a movie or anything. I didn't act up, so I don't know why. We just didn't really get along. But he took me to see Star Wars. So he introduced me to Star Wars, and I remember watching it. And when Darth Vader came on the screen, I was scared. I was like, just scared. And I was also confused with the stormtroopers, because I was always told as a 4-year-old that the good guys wear white and the bad guys wear black. So you knew Darth Vader was bad. The stormtroopers were in white, but they turned out to be the bad guys. So I was a little confused at 4, but Darth Vader was not confused. I knew he was the bad guy, and he scared me.
So why don't we go over to Tammy? Why don't you? Was this a first time watch for you?
No, I've seen it a number of times. I don't remember the first time I saw it because I didn't watch anything in order, because I saw Empire Strikes Back first. So that was when I was a kid. I saw that when it came out. But
okay. What was your first introduction to the Star Wars universe?
I don't remember when.
Well, you were telling me it was The Empire Strikes Back, so tell me about
Yeah.
that experience. And then what led you to actually finding out about the original Star Wars and watching it?
Well, I convinced my great grandmother to take me to Empire Strikes Back, and I was told at the end of it she'll never take me to a movie like that again. Chewie scared her right off at the beginning of the movie. Yeah, that was that. Yeah.
That was awesome. Chewie!
So
Sorry.
Chewie, we're home.
she's been taking me to all like kid movies until that, and
That's a
I
kid
guess
movie.
as I got older, yeah, then I was like, oh, well, this is supposed to go with that. Okay, well, I'll go see that one, and then I saw Return of the Jedi. Then I started seeing them, and then it confuses me a bit that the other three were the beginning of this. When they
Well,
came,
especially since these are this is the first of the three. In fact, this is the sequel to this is the Skywalker Saga sequel, sequel trilogy, if I remember correctly.
but see, that's all confusing to me because
Yeah,
I watched.
It confuses some people. Basically, and you watched it very confusing. You didn't watch it 4, 5, 6 as everyone else did. You watched it 5, 6, 4, and then or 4 or 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. Then 4. I don't know when you saw 4, but yeah, you saw it pretty confusing. So I can understand why you're confused. But most people get confused.
Well, I watched
I don't
the
get
other
it.
three.
It's 4, 5, 6, and then they came out with a sequel with a prequel trilogy.
She didn't know them as episode 3, 4, or 5, or what is it, 4, 5, and 6, or 5.
No, I didn't. And then when the other,
She knew them as Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. That's what she knew them as.
I knew it was wrong.
And then when the other three came out, I watched those in order, yes. But then everybody was telling me, well, this is how it all started is with these three. And I'm like, well, what? Well, what happened to the other three? So that's where I
started with the
confused.
4, 5, 6. Then they decided to show the prequel of how he became Darth Vader. And that's what the prequel is. His story of how he became Darth Vader, how he became, how Anakin Skywalker, who ends up becoming Luke's father and Leia's father. How he started.
I kind of
So
get that now,
and then they decided to have a couple one-offs, Rogue One and the Solo movie, and then they finally did the much anticipated sequels, in which we have 7, 8, and 9, and finally that finishes off the Skywalker line for as far as movies go. Not as TV though. We will have many years of TV hopefully.
Yep. Going over to Boris.
But I did enjoy it.
Oh.
It's just was somewhat confusing. But yes, I
Well, I
like
can imagine you started in the middle of a middle.
Well, we'll get into more about what we like about this particular film in a little bit once we go through the plot. But and we'll kind of go through some of the characters too, because we definitely have to start with a lot of the characters as well. Boris, why don't you tell us a little bit? Was this a first time watch for you?
Yeah, of course it was. I'm kidding. Of course it wasn't. The first time, I don't remember when it was. I was a kid. The first time I saw it, maybe 8 or 9 years old, something like that.
You were old.
Sorry, what did you say? I'm sorry, what did you say?
Oh, I said you were old. I'm just kidding. I was 4 and you were 8, so you were old.
Oh, yeah. So I remember, well, at that time, I was a kid. I was drawn to the franchise because I found all the character designs intriguing. And, well, at that time, I didn't really fully understand the story, and I wasn't even aware of not understanding it. I just knew these are the good guys, these are the bad guys. They are fighting. I was watching the exciting fights, and that was it. I liked the franchise a lot back then, but I never got as far as Kroll did. But yeah, I did like this movie quite a bit. It was the time when I was into the franchise as a kid was just around the time when episode 1 was about to be released. And I remember this movie, A New Hope, was actually probably my favorite of those that existed at the time. And a funny thing I have to mention is you mentioned being scared of Darth Vader as a kid or being scared of Chewbacca. As a kid, I was scared of Jabba the Hutt.
I know people that were afraid of Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, which I'm like, how can you be afraid of Yoda? He's a awesome looking puppet, but I don't know. Each to their own. I mean, I guess I don't know. I don't get it, but
why? Now I wonder were those people who was afraid of Yoda, were they also afraid of the baby Yoda in the Mandalorian?
Right? I don't know. It's a controversy. Ah.
Well, I wasn't afraid of Chewie. Chewie was my favorite, but my Nana, my great grandma, she didn't like Chewie.
Yeah, that's what I meant. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was afraid of Darth Vader. I didn't say I didn't like him. I mean, he was a great villain, but I was afraid of him.
I thought he was cool.
I always liked these dark costumes of the bad guys in Star Wars, even as a kid. Around that time, when I was 8 or 9 years old, I cosplayed Darth Maul shortly after Episode 1 came out, which was more or less the beginning of my general fondness of cosplay and
That's awesome.
getting dressed up for Halloween and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Well, I would have to say my first time that I watched Star Wars was when I was probably about 5 years old. And I liked this universe of the Star Wars just as much as I liked Star Trek. I was just as much a Star Trekkie as I was a Star Wars fan, and I like both. It's not blasphemy. I can like both and love each for its own thing. Whereas Star Trek is more of a scientifical level of illogicalness. The Star Wars universe is definitely a more philosophical, and well, I would have to say both have their action points. It's just
but until you get to the new Star Trek movies, Star Wars has them way beat on the action, that's what I loved about Star Wars.
I disagree when it comes to Wrath of Khan.
When I was young, I was definitely not. My mother was both, so I grew up around that, but I was not. I ended up getting into Star Trek as I was older, when I was more mature and was able to understand it better, and could appreciate the talky, less action. And the new movies I love because they're a lot more action than the older ones. And
I remember watching the original Star Wars without the added stuff, and it was still a really good storyline.
Oh, it's freaking awesome!
You know, I mean, I've also seen the cleaned up version that company actually went back and like put a grindhouse version out or whatnot. I've seen a copy of that, and that really cleaned up still looks pretty awesome. I mean, you got this whole landscape of Tatooine and stuff like that, and seeing it now, I think it's just kind of grown over time. Time when they remastered it and went back and added the things in. At first, I was like, at first I was against it because you didn't need to add all of that. But I did.
You were driving me nuts last night watching it. Oh, that's added. Oh, that's added. Oh, that's added.
The way I feel about it, okay, it actually got cleaned up on VHS. So when he digitally remastered it, that wasn't the first cleanup. That was actually the second time they cleaned it up. They cleaned it up for VHS, making it a little more look newer. They hadn't added anything yet. But the second time they remastered it and made it in for DVDs, that's when they added a few things. I immediately liked the added things to it, and I liked the little polish. Now, I love the original as well, because although the polished version is still shown that it's worn, that, you know, the world is still looks a little newer and shinier than the original, which the original makes it a little bit better as far as worn universe. But so the first time you ever watch Star Wars, I recommend that you watch it in the original form you can on VHS, in a VCR, in the original version before any fixes. That version is the best version you're gonna see for the first time, because you get to see all the little things, dents and everything they did, and all the armors, everything they did, because they wanted to make this world like it's not a brand new world. It's a living world. It's a living, breathing entity, and they did that, and that's why Star Wars has become such a big thing. And it is. It's not just a movie.
And
it's a whole universe.
I've always liked science fiction when it has to do with something that has to deal with a desert of any kind. And the thing that you have to know about Star Wars is that some of it was filmed in the Sahara Desert.
Yep.
And I love films that have to deal with the Sahara Desert. I believe The Mummy, the remake of The Mummy, was set in the Sahara Desert, if I remember correctly. Dune may have been set in the
new
Sahara
Dune,
Desert.
maybe.
The new Dune, maybe.
Yeah, I gotta watch that. Speaking of, but yeah.
But I do have to mention Dune because Dune is Dune. Dune is its own thing. It should have had more to it, but yeah, it's a separate entity, and yet I do think that it is a phenomenal film set in a world of politics. That being said, so is Star Wars. Star Wars is set in a world of politics with its own levels of things. I mean,
a lot of people compare Palpatine to Biden. You know, so there you go. I've seen memes where they're both saying I love democracy, and look what Palpatine did after he said he loves democracy. He destroyed it.
But I enjoy Star Wars for what it is. It is the beginning of a franchise that spans the years, you know, and obviously it definitely is popular. It is a favorite among many, and I enjoy the characters for what they are. incestual though they are. especially in this first film, because we get a moment where Han Solo and Luke are like dead on, like thinking to each other, okay, who's gonna sleep with her more, you know?
Yeah. Well, Han acts like he's not interested, and then when he realizes that Luke likes her, he plays on him a little bit, saying, "Oh, I don't know. What do you think about us?" And then Luke's like, "No," because you can tell he likes him. But I think it's more incestual in this second one than now, because she actually kisses him, and not the way a sister kisses a brother. And the funny thing is, you say, "Well, they don't know yet." But in Return of the Jedi, when he tells her that they're brother and sister, she goes, "I know. I've always known." Well, why'd you kiss him then? I always think that. I always think, every time I see that and hear that, I think, why did you kiss him? If you always known, somehow you've always known, why did you kiss him? Tell me later.
Interesting. Well, it's been a while since I watched these movies, so yeah, I forgot that. I forgot the scene when. Did you say Leah is the one who says she knew it? I don't remember that scene.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. When Luke tells Leia that they're brother and sister, we just lost David and Tammy. When Luke says that, when Luke tells Leia that he has a sister, and he looks at her and says, "Yes, Leia, you're my sister," and Leia is like, "I knew it. Somehow I've always known it," and that's when my mind goes, Empire Strikes Back. She kisses him to make Han jealous, but it's like, if she known that was her brother, why'd she kiss him like that?
Well, like I said, I don't remember that scene. Now that you say it, it is an interesting question.
Yeah, you'll have to watch the next two movies and watch for that, and then you can be like, oh yeah, I know what he's talking about.
Well, we will probably get to them, but I actually wanted to.
It was very hard for me not to watch Empire Strikes Back after and Return of the Jedi after, but I just wanted to focus on the Star Wars original, so I didn't watch any others. But usually I'll watch all 11 movies now. I watch them all.
Yeah.
I mean, each time movies come out, it's like, okay, I watched the original many times. Then I watched the first two. Then I watched the first three. Then there's 4 movies, then 5 and 6, and every time I keep adding to what I watch every time I watch them. And I'm up to the 11 movies now, and I'm sure they're going to make more Star Wars movies, and I'll add them onto as well. I actually, last time I did it, I not only watched all the Star Wars movies, but then I went on and watched the Clone Wars and then Rebels again. And then Bad Batch came out and watched that. So I actually added some of the TV shows too. I haven't gotten around. I have watched Mandalorian twice now. I got to watch it again. But yeah, so I've added all the movies. Sometimes I add some of the TV shows. And it's just a fun way to watch all the Star Wars movies. Welcome back, guys.
Sorry, we lost connection for a moment. So
that's okay. I feel
that's fine.
So let's talk about the beginning that we see here. So
the scroll.
Yeah.
I love that scroll. I mean, the second I hear the music, I could be in another room and someone watching it, and I'll hear the music like, who's watching Star Wars? The second I hear the music, the second that scroll comes on, I know Star Wars. I mean, when you're talking about music in movies, there is none more well known than Star Wars. Superman might be close. Superman was pretty well done too. But Star Wars, the music, the second you hear anything, any kind of music from Star Wars, you know someone's watching Star Wars or some kind of parody of Star Wars, because there's billions out there. So yeah, I love that scroll. It tells you what's going on. That the Empire has built this massive ship of destruction that can destroy a planet, and the rebellion has just won their first victory by stealing the plans, which we end up finally seeing in Rogue One, which was awesome. Finally seeing.
Well, and I like that setup in the very beginning of the movie,
Yeah, it's
because
great.
then it's kind of like you're reading a little bit about like some of the history, and then
It sets you
where
up.
you are in the story, and it's kind of become a tradition to do that in every single Star Wars film.
With the exception of was it Solo or Rogue One? One of those two does not have the opening scroll.
I think Solo.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
that's blasphemy.
It is. I agree. They should have had it, and maybe we would have done better in the theater if it had. No, there was a lot of problems with that movie because of issues people had with the eighth movie. People decided that it was they didn't like it. A lot of people didn't like it, so they didn't go see Solo because in protest of what they didn't like about 8, and therefore Solo suffered. And I think Solo is very underrated. I think it was really great job, and it was really well done, and I really enjoyed it. And I wish more people liked it, but hopefully
I enjoyed aspects of Solo. I mean, it did take strides to show the relationship between Chewbacca and Han Solo, how he met with Lando Calrissian and stuff like that.
I love how the Empire actually names him Solo. What's your clan name? I don't have a clan name. Han Solo. I'm like, oh shit. I mean, obviously in the books it happened differently, but it was a nice addition the way they did it.
And this is one of those movies that the books actually came later. So
no, I'm talking about the Legends.
When
I say books, 9 times out of 10 I'm talking about Legends. I've never read a new canon book, and eventually I will when I'm done with Legends. Okay, because that's my thing. Because Legends was just perfect. I mean, maybe I've heard some good stuff about some of the new canon books. But right now I'm a snob and I'll only read the Legends. Now we lost Tammy.
That's okay. She'll be back.
I figured. But
maybe she got kidnapped by the Empire.
Yeah. Vader I thought she was a Jedi. The Great Hunt.
Princess Laidback, you're back.
Well, that's better than Princess Leia, Mom. One of those
Mad TV would often imitate Star Wars characters, and I think they called Luke Skywalker Lube Skystalker, and
probably
R2D2.
Oh my.
I forget what they called them, but they called Han Solo Hands Solo.
Hey, I call myself Han Solo because my left hand in one of my characters.
But in any case, we get this after the wording. We get this scene where we actually meet our C-3PO, a human cyborg.
Hold on 1 second before you say that. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to mention the opening scene, like after the crawl, the spaceships. Okay. You see the spaceships up in the sky, and they're having this ferocious battle back and forth. So it starts right off into the action. You get your scroll, a little bit of backstory, and bam, right into the action. It's like, wow, look at this. And then you see on board everybody running around, rushing because the big bad ship is about to board the smaller ship, and they're all getting around and getting prepared. And that's when we go into seeing the droids. Go ahead.
Well, correct. And we meet the Princess Leia as she is talking to the R2 unit. Oh no, I think we'll lose Tammy again, but
we did.
the R2 unit, we get that famous scene where, oh, I got to remove that one. Hold on, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay.
Yeah, she's giving to the disc of the secret plans.
Yep, she is giving R2D2 the secret plans that are apparently of the Death Star to R2, and that's where we get the pandemonium of these robots who apparently know each other. C-3PO of human cyborg relations, and R2D2, who is this rolling. I would have to say that he's got his own like dialogue too. With his
he
beats.
does. I mean, I totally know what he's saying when he's doing his beeps and stuff. You know, it's like Luke can understand him. It's like I can almost understand what he's saying. They do such a great job with their beeps and stuff that you can actually know what he's saying.
I do love how sarcastic C-3PO is with R2D2 all the time.
Well, R2D2 is sarcastic like that. And again, beeps and stuff. And it's like certain parts you realize, you know, some of the things that R2 says. And it's great. Just on a side note, sorry, Boris. On a side note,
they're like,
there was a commercial where R2 is smoking a cigarette, and it was an anti-smoking commercial. And C-3PO is like, R2, you're smoking, put that down, put that out, that's bad for your health. And they go into what cigarettes are and how it's bad for you and stuff. And R2 finally puts it out and stuff. It was a great commercial. You've never seen it, look for it. Probably find it on YouTube or something, somewhere out there. Somebody will have that commercial. It was great.
I'm going to watch that later. What I was going to say is they say R2D2 is the most perverted movie character in all history because they censored every single word he ever pronounced.
Everything he said was a profanity. I absolutely love R2 in 3PO. Absolutely love him. You know, it's like, and C-3PO is actually the only character that has been seen in every single movie. All of the movies. R2 has missed a couple movies, but C-3PO has been in every single movie.
Which movies was R2D2 missing from?
He wasn't in Rogue One. But C-3PO was.
Oh.
But in any case, we get this whole pandemonium that apparently the Empire is about to storm the ships. So Princess Leia bends over to R2, and she basically records the message. We don't see the recording until later because it's the secret message that then the droids end up going into the hallway, getting into an escape pod, and escaping to a planet below. Meanwhile,
C-3PO is totally against this because it's only for humans, and R2 is not supposed to go in there. And C-3PO says, "I'm not getting in there," and then he gets shot at, and he decides, "Well, I'm getting in there because I don't want to get shot." So he gets in anyways, even though he's clearly against it. He gets in anyways. Go ahead.
And then we get that great entrance of Darth Vader when the sliding doors open and he's like, So what do y'all think about that entrance of Darth Vader coming through the ship, and you get all this like?
It's absolutely awesome. I mean, just still to this day, I watch it, and it's such a great entrance. You don't expect it. You see these stormtroopers coming through, a bunch of guys in this white armor, and they're actually shooting the rebels and hitting them, even though there's memes that stormtroopers can't hit.
Yeah.
They can't hit the normal rebels. They killed a lot of them, and then this dark figure who's just the contrast between the white stormtroopers and this all completely black figure comes stepping through, and you don't know who this guy is yet, but you know he's some kind of badass. You know that he is somebody that's gonna wreck some stuff, and that's what he does, And I love he's interrogating. Next thing he's interrogating a guy, and he's like, if this is an ambassadorship, where is the ambassador? And before the guy can answer, he kills him. He jumps like that. He's just asking just to ask, but he doesn't really want the answer because he knows there is no ambassador, and just kills him before he can even answer. It's such a great scene. He's choking him through the force, and he just snaps his neck, and it's really well done. It's not gross, it's not gore-ish or anything, but it didn't need to be, and it got the point across very well. I mean, these movies are pretty much PG-13, so you don't get a lot of gore violence, but there's a lot of violence. It's just you don't see a lot of blood and stuff.
So, Tammy, what do you think about that entrance of Darth Vader? Could you feel like a dark presence when he came on board?
Hello, Tammy.
Damn it! We lost her again.
Oh, shit!
Wow. Philip, why don't you answer that while we wait for Tammy?
Yeah. What about you, Boris? Did you? Oh, hold on. I think she's coming back. Give us 1 second. Hey, Tammy. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Tammy?
Hello.
Okay. Well, why don't you tell us what you thought of Darth Vader? I
can't hear her.
I can't hear you. There's something about your mic that we can't hear you.
Is she muted still?
Yeah, something is wrong.
Well, Boris, why don't you tell us your thoughts while I go figure that out?
Well, yeah, his entrance was definitely really cool. Like I said, I saw it, so I unfortunately can't remember my very first impressions of it. And I was probably too young to even have proper impressions of it to begin with. But yeah, it.
Yeah, I remember my first impression, like I said before, I was 4, so it was the second he came in there, I definitely felt like it was a evil president. And like I said, I was scared. I was very scared of Darth Vader when he came up, like he was going to actually come to the theater and come in at me or something. Definitely.
Like, you expected him to become like Samara from The Ring.
Yeah. Except I hadn't seen that yet because I hadn't. Yeah. I definitely expected Darth Vader to come at me and try to kill me or something. It was very scary. Very, very scary.
Sorry, I just had to make that joke. The Ring is one of my...
It's actually a funny story. This guy, his son had a birthday, and he decided that he was going to dress up like Darth Vader. And he does, and he goes in, and his son just starts screaming and yelling, and he is deathly afraid of his father because he's like, he even says the part, he's like, I am your father. And the kid's just screaming and screaming, and he's really afraid of him. and he takes off the costume, and he's still afraid. That kid grew up his whole entire life deathly afraid of Darth Vader, and for a while,
Oh my.
his father was really Darth Vader. So he actually traumatized this kid trying to just do something nice for him on his birthday because he loved Star Wars, and it turned out the opposite way.
Oh,
Funny story.
damn. Well, how old was that kid when that happened?
Yeah. Are you back with us, Tammy?
Hoot hoot.
Tammy, are you back with us?
Nope.
Bloody
Apparently
hell.
not.
Apparently not.
Gotta love
All
it
right.
on the day and age, you know. Everything works until it don't.
Well, she'll be back.
Right.
Hopefully.
Dave, what was your impression of that scene? Oh, wait, she might be back.
My impression of that scene was that it was an amazing seeing him flow through with his cape and oh, guess who we have?
Oh.
Hey,
Hello.
Mo has decided to join us, folks.
Hey, what's up, guys?
It's okay. We're actually still in the beginning of talking about the movie. We started pretty late, and we've had a lot to talk about.
Well, why don't we, before we get into Tammy's thoughts on the first scene here, why don't we go with your thoughts? Was this a first time watch for you on Star Wars?
Oh, no. I saw this tons as a kid, man. I was a pretty big Star Wars fan growing up. I think the first time I saw this, well, I know the first time that I saw Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, we checked them out of the library. Like, I vividly remember going in and being like, yes, there's more of them. And, you know, they had like the cases in those plastic slides that you'd pull out of this thing.
Nice.
So I would assume that I saw Star Wars the same way, but I probably didn't get to go pick it out. I think my grandpa probably surprised us with it or something. And I love it, man. This first one and Empire are still my favorites, I think, were I to be forced to choose. And I try to revisit it every couple of years at least, you know. It's just a good time.
Okay. Tammy, maybe try speaking and seeing if we can hear you. Hello. Can we hear you?
Tammy.
Testing 1, 2, testing.
Okay, I think she's still having you guys freeze and she can't hear you. But
Tammy! Tammy!
I think she's trying.
Yeah, she's frozen, I think.
Yeah, let me kick her from the studio for a moment. Sorry.
I just hear noises. And everybody's frozen.
Hey, I hear her now.
Oh,
we just heard her.
Looks like we're... Yes. Looks like we have some disturbance in the force.
Yes. I'm going to try.
As if millions of voices cried out and suddenly silenced.
Yeah, I was must be broadcasting from Alderaan.
Darn it! Knew we should have gone with off.
She'll be back, but anyways, we were talking about that first scene with Darth Vader when he showed up. Mo, why don't you tell us about your what you thought of that first scene when he shows up?
Oh, it's amazing, dude. I mean, like, that's almost proper scary as a little kid, especially when he just rocks up in there. I mean, I don't think that there's ever maybe been a better opening to a movie than the opening to the first Star Wars, you know. It's a perfect way to set up the villain for really like the rest of the series almost, you know.
Okay. And Tammy, can you hear us now?
I think too, just like the Star Destroyer going overhead after the ship, like it's been parodied in like Spaceballs and shit, but it's breathtaking, man. Because especially I'd seen like Star Trek and shit before Star Wars, and they don't quite do anything on that scale, at least in the TV episodes. So that in itself, just the ships, was a sight to behold for the first time,
Yeah,
we covered that tonight before you got here.
This does seem like there is a Star Destroyer above Tammy's head.
Right?
Oh shit!
Right.
There's Dave. Yeah, it's crazy, dude. I mean, the first ship goes by and you're like, oh wow, that's pretty cool, and then the Star Destroyer shows up and you're like, holy shit,
Yeah.
It definitely. I can only imagine what it must have been like for adults at the time that had been watching sci-fi for years, because it was just unprecedented. You'd never seen miniatures on that scale at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I was 4 when I saw it, and I was like amazed, and like, this is like the awesomest thing I've ever seen. And of course, I'm only 4, so I hadn't seen a lot, but I've seen a lot more movies than most 4-year-olds probably. But, yeah, it was definitely. I was completely amazed, but yeah.
All right.
I still get amazed at times with it, so it is definitely standing the test of time, and it is awesome. Like I was saying before, seeing it in its original form is still just awesome as well, and then seeing with it slightly buffed up, and then again the second time he buffs it up, and then they add some things to it, and each time each iteration of it, I feel it just gets a little bit better.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, I mean, it's I have a hard time with the added stuff, It's
Some people do.
Tammy is having technical issues, so she's just gonna have to bow out today. So
that's a shame. Hopefully she'll be able to make it again next time.
I'll be getting that new mic and
bye. We see you now.
I'll send this setup your way for Tammy.
Now we could hear you for a moment.
Yeah, right? But
we heard her say bye, guys.
But yeah, man, I mean, there's just everything that I, like about movies or special effects films is pretty much present. Like, and just lots of stuff, there's robots, a badass villain, spaceships, miniatures, like Star Wars was super formative for me as a kid, and this type of shit that I like, and like all other types of films. Star Wars and Godzilla, I think, in terms of special effects, are like, left a huge imprint on me. To this day, I still get excited when I see like miniatures used in a movie or anything like that, And then I guess like Clash of the Titans and shit, like the Harryhausen stuff with stop motion would be right there with, the miniature stuff.
Right.
So after that beginning scene where we get the droids going to the planet, we get them going off their separate ways, because they're like the Bert and Ernie and the Heckle and Jekyll of the Star Wars space opera. And
then the stormtroopers show up and comb the desert. Oh
no,
that's wrong.
Wrong movie. But they go off in their separate ways, and we don't see what happens to C-3PO, but we see what happens to R2.
Well, we kind of do. I mean, C-3PO sees the Jawa ship. He doesn't know it's a Jawa ship. He just sees the ship, and he's like, "I'm safe over here, over here." So we assume he gets picked up because he volunteers himself to be captured, because he knows that he screwed up and didn't follow R2. So. He needs to be saved now. And then he brings out to saying,
he's a robot. He trusts everything and everything thing that is a human. So
yeah, he trusts everything, but he's also afraid of everything too. Everything's going to kill him, or he's doomed. You hear that constantly all the time. we're doomed. We're doomed. We're doomed. We're doomed. We're doomed.
To be fair,
C-3PO,
throughout the
Star
course
Wars
of the
story.
series, he does get a lot of shit, and he gets dismembered at one point and carried
He
around
does,
by
he
Chewie in
does.
a little backpack. So
Well,
not
he also
wrong.
gets destroyed by the Sand People. Somewhat. His arms get torn off or whatnot. But in any case, they get picked up by the Jawas, which these Jawa creatures are like the Ewoks in like little hoodies. So to me, they are basically the one and the same. It's just they're from the hood. But
I disagree with that. But everyone has their own.
they're similar. I mean, Jawas, he's kind of
Definitely
spot
similar.
on with the fact that they're sort of like an Ewok type creature. And I think
they
Jawas
are.
are rat people, though, actually, from the books.
Yeah,
if I
exactly.
remember.
They're definitely.
But they're like the
they're
thieving
scavengers
tweakers
and-
of the
and-
Star Wars galaxy, pretty much. Like
Yeah,
they'll
they-
steal
they-
anything that's not bolted down,
Yeah,
and
they-
some
they-
stuff that is.
They yeah, I mean, going into like the Mandalorian, they steal his ship and take it apart, and then after he has to earn it all back.
Yeah, I mean, and it's fully like Jawas are scummy, but they could be reasoned with for a price. So they're not really all
Right.
bad.
They're all
just
about money,
opportunists,
You can have anything back as long as you have the right price.
you can basically haggle a price with them, yeah. But in any case,
Threatening them does not work. Threatening them is not. You can kill them, and they.
I'll be honest. In the original Star Wars, the one without the added colorization and the added stuff, the Jawas unit kind of looked like I don't know, out of focus and fuzzy. The first time I watched it, but now seeing it remastered, it looks pretty damn cool against that sunset,
Oh yeah, definitely.
And you can definitely see the outline of this thing. It looks like this big garbage truck on wheels.
Oh yeah.
Except it's got more of like the tractor that mowed over Christine. Kind of wheels.
It's a sand crawler is what it's called, but yeah, it definitely is like a dumpster on a track, and that's basically what they do. I mean, they pick up anything and everything they can, and they're masters at putting things together and taking things apart, and they tinker with everything. And,
so in a way, they're like technical wizards.
They're like gnomes. In the medieval world, they would be gnomes because gnomes sync with everything, and they're also short and small. The gnomes don't necessarily take everything and sell it back to you like the Jawas, but they're basically like a different sect of gnomes.
I did think that they were cute creatures. To be honest,
I love Jawas.
Yeah, I do too. There's actually one story where a Jawa is saved by Luke, and the Jawa is so thankful. Basically, tries to have like a life debt like Chewie does with Luke, and but the Jawa is just was so maltreated and horrible. It's basically a slave, and Luke saves it and is so thankful, and it's just like. It's just you really get to see a huge personality from this Jawa, and how happy
dude,
he is.
And friggin' what is it? Death Troopers, the Jawa that he teams up with, basically saves him several times throughout the thing. I think it helps him get through like doors and stuff because Jawas are master tinkerers. They can you can just pop open a panel and figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, exactly.
They just stink like shit. That's the problem with Jawas.
Yeah, they're
smelly
don't
creatures.
They smell really bad. So
in any case, we get them coming up to the place in which Luke's Uncle Owen is come to meet and greet the tractor or whatever it is, and he's basically haggling with the Jawas on prices for some robots for the new harvest, because evidently they've got a new crop that they've got to get out, and Luke has signed on for another year with his uncle, but
the whole season.
A whole season to help his uncle out, and you can definitely see that he is really wants to join his friends who have already joined the fighters.
Joined the rebellion.
Correct. So, yeah, there is definitely a farm boy who was homesick for war. You know, kind of a story.
Things.
And he doesn't know much about his father. I mean, there's obviously things that his uncle is not telling him about anything. But
and we have no idea who his father is either, right?
No, we
at
don't
the
know
moment, at the moment we do not. But we end up having the two droids end up being the droids that they buy, because they tried to buy one, but he like blew up like on this way over.
He had a bad motivator,
and
it blew up. And so C-3PO says, "What about that one, the blue one?" And so I'm going, says, "What about the blue one? We'll take that one." And R2 comes in. R2 tried to go with him in the first place, and they had to stun him and hold him back because, you know. So finally he gets what he wants. He gets to go with C-3PO. And, you know, C-3PO's like, why I should stick my neck out for you, I don't know. And, you know, that's how C-3PO acts. You know, he acts like he's not really friends with R2, but then, you know, he absolutely loves R2 the next second. So, you know, that's just his personality.
And, of course, we get the scene where C-3PO is getting an oil bath, and while he's getting his bath treatment, that's when Luke stumbles upon the recording of Princess Leia, and he sees it, and he's like, "Wow, that's a beautiful woman." Wait, can I get more of that? So the first of the incestual thoughts came.
Illegal in most states.
This must have been a Kentucky from far, far away.
Well, these are
it's so fucked up, the whole Luke and Leia thing, and because they got us all with that as kids, you know, because there's not a boy in the world that wasn't like, she's hot. Look, you get to kiss her. That's awesome. You know, and then later you find out that it's a sister. Like it's
the greatest setup of the universe, to be honest.
It is.
I have another about that. A few years ago, I was at some convention, and there was a lecture about cosplay, and they mentioned a pair of cosplayers who cosplayed Luke and Leia at the time when Empire Strikes Back was already out, but Return of the Jedi wasn't. So they didn't know that Luke and Leia were siblings, and they kissed for photos of the cosplay. And then when they found out what they had done later when Return of the Jedi came out.
That's real shit. That's why you see it in like That 70s Show. They do the whole thing too, where Eric always imagines himself as Luke and he wants Donna to dress up as Leia and shit.
Yeah,
and it's at that time before Jedi was out, so they had no idea. You know, oh man, how many people did that as couples costumes is probably insane.
Yeah, it's funny. I always think of Han and Leia together, but there was so many that saw Luke and Leia together, and it's absolutely funny. It's absolutely funny. You know, you have husband and wives always fucking doing these cosplays as Luke and Leia together and stuff. And
well, yeah, I mean, Luke and Leia were like the first galactic couple there for a moment, and then when it was Han,
twist that around.
Then it was Han Solo, and everybody's like, "Well, what the fuck happened to Luke?" You know. But
I mean, let's be real.
I always liked Han with her.
Yeah,
myself. Like,
Han and
I
Leia are
always,
the better couple, I think,
I,
because
I always, you could tell right away the way they clashed. They clashed just perfectly. That you could tell there was something there, but neither one of them wanted to admit it to the other one. Han kind of admitted it more, but he wanted her to admit it, and it took her a long time before she would admit it. It wasn't until the end of Empire Strikes Back that she finally admits her feelings.
Well, let's continue.
yeah, you
with
could tell they were gonna knock nibblers as soon as they meet.
Oh
It's
yeah,
fucking...
yeah, definitely knew it was gonna happen. But
Well, let's go back to the storyline. So we get that recording, and then he like fucks around with R2D2 for a moment, and suddenly the recording disappears, and he's like, "Well, what the hell happened?" So ultimately he ends up like going and apparently having dinner with his uncle, and he tells him
he takes the C-3PO says R2 says if you take the restraining bolt off, maybe he can get the video back. So it's R2 actually tricks him, and C-3PO doesn't realize it's a trick. But so they take the restraining bolt. They go, I guess you're too small to run away. Takes the restraining bolt off, and that's when he goes to the dinner.
Yeah, and ultimately he gets that whole talk. Well, that he has with his uncle, where he was actually thinking of going and like joining up with his bros at the academy. And he's like, "But Luke, I need you. This is like the harvest, and once we get through this harvest, I'll have more money to hire more people, and you're my most important yada yada yada."
Also mentions that the droids he thinks were owned by someone else.
Yes,
by Obi-Wan Kenobi, who he thinks is old Ben, and quickly his uncle is like, "Oh no, I think he's dead. He died around the time of his father." And Luke immediately thinks, "Oh, you knew my father?" And he's like, "I told you to drop it," and because he doesn't want to talk about what happened.
Yeah, in so many words, he's like, "I knew these droids were stolen. I bought them from Jawas. Okay, just drop it."
Yeah. We own now. We own now. Take R2 to get his
memory erased.
That'll be the end of it. Now.
Yeah, and then he storms off, and Beru kind of talks a little bit of sense into Owen, like, "Look, man, all his friends have already left to join the academy.
He's too much like his father in him," and that's when Owen's like, "That's what I'm afraid of." So
that's when we get that. I like this next moment because he's like gazing off into the stars. Like that's a cool sunset moment.
Oh, it's perfect.
Oh yeah, it's one of the most iconic in the entire franchise.
I mean, he says nothing. He's just standing there looking, and that scene is just so awesome. I mean,
the theme swells up, and
nothing is awesome, but it really is. I mean, the way he's just stargazing. You can feel the feelings.
And the way that John Williams wrote the score for this particular scene is just masterful.
The whole thing. Like I said, his music is the most for Star Wars is the most recognizable, I think, of any film ever. It's just the second you hear any kind of music of Star Wars, if you've seen Star Wars, you know what people are watching. You know
he
know
knew
where
that he
they're
wasn't gonna top it ever. As Jake would point out, that's why he cannibalized it for like the rest of his career. Not to say that he's like a bad composer at all, but I mean, it's when you have something as good as the Star Wars soundtrack, you're gonna revisit certain tricks that you used on it for sure.
Well, you kind of have to.
In any case, he gets back to the farm, or at least where he left C-3PO, and obviously C-3PO is like hiding out somewhere, because he's afraid of what his master Luke will say when he hears that R2 has left the premises. And basically that's pretty much what it is. He basically is like upset because now he's got to go after the darn thing, except he can't right now because the sand dune sand people would get him, and it's too dark. So he goes off in the morning to and actually that's when we get the moment where his uncle is looking for him. He's like, Luke.
And his aunt's like, "Oh, I think he already took those I think he already left for the morning. He's like, you better take in those droids, or they'll be held at bay.
Well, in any case, Luke goes off into the desert looking for this droid with C-3PO, and they end up getting attacked by these sand people. And lo and behold, an old man comes along, claiming to be Ben Kenobi, and he basically tells him, "I knew your father, Luke." He's like, "You knew my father?" He's like, "Yeah, except your uncle never wanted you to know that your father was one of the best Jedi Knights in the world. Oh,
And-
by the
and
way,
his
here's a light."
Your father wanted you to have this, and of course, Luke. This is the weapon of a Jedi Knight, and the first thing Luke does is he looks at the part of the lightsaber to his face. If he had hit that button, we'd have the end of the movie right there.
We've gotten
So,
many good
it was
memes out of
definitely
that
not
moment.
too bright. It was like looking at the barrel of a gun. You know, oh, isn't that gun? Look at this barrel. You know.
Well, he is kind of blonde, you know.
Yeah,
but,
he
but
definitely not too smart of a choice. Hey, I'm born.
well, he's supposed to be like this kid who hasn't really done much more than farm work or whatnot.
He
You know,
definitely played that part well. He definitely
bumbling, awkward, but definitely has an aspiration to be a good pilot or whatever.
This is where we have Luke say, "What happened to my father?" And you see Obi-Wan like kind of swallow for a second, and he says, "Vader, who was a pupil of his and who he turned to the dark side, betrayed and murdered your father." This is what he tells Luke, and everyone's like, "Wow, you know, it's very believable." Of course, later we find out, you know, Ben lied. Ben straight lied. Just like R2, he's like, okay, maybe he never owned R2, but as we know in the prequels, well, he definitely knows who R2 is. But anyways, go on.
Well, there's kind of that, and you know, partially it comes from Alec Guinness sort of thinking the movie was bullshit, you know, because he was like an old seasoned theater actor being in some sci-fi shit. And to be fair, you know, most of what he was seeing, you know, it probably felt like he was just doing any other B-grade sci-fi movie when he was actually on set doing it. Yeah, you didn't see all the miniatures and everything put together until the movie was like a finished product.
He was not a fan of the movie.
But it lends something to that whole thing of like, you know, Ben having been out in the desert so long, he kind of has became a loopy hermit in a way. Because at first when they meet, he's like, "Oh, Ben," or whatever, and then he says something about Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he kind of is like, "Now that's a name I haven't heard in a long time."
Well, do you know him? Well, of course I know him. He's me. Which is kind of silly because, you know, you say, "Oh, I haven't heard that in a long time," and then normally you would say, "Well, you know, that's a nickname that I used to have or a name I used to have." But no, he just like goes on to talk about him like he's a different person.
Speaking of which, was it ever explained why Obi-Wan changed his name to Ben?
He didn't change his name. His name always was Ben. Obi-Wan, I think Obi-Wan might be in his Jedi name. You know, like Sith have a Sith name and Jedis have a Jedi name. So his name is probably Ben Kenobi. And he changed it to Obi-Wan.
And honestly, you get to know a little bit about his character when you watch Star Wars episodes 1, 2, and 3 a little bit more too. So at least when he was a Jedi. So, and that was when he was, and that was still when he was an apprentice. So, but in any case, and that's the thing. One thing that should be said about the dudes of the Force is that there are two sides. There's the powers of light and darkness.
Oh, there's also neutral too.
Yeah, there's neutral too. But when it comes to Jedi Knights, you will always find a master and an apprentice, but you will find them in multitudes of people. Whereas on the dark side of things, there can only be one master and one apprentice.
At least later on. Originally, Sith were like the Jedi, and there were many of them. It wasn't until Darth Bane, I believe
Yep.
it was, or Melgis. Was it
No,
Bane?
Darth Bane.
It
He's
was
the dude
Bane.
who
I
figured out
decided
that if he
that
just murdered everyone, he could
it
have
would
all
just
the
be-
power for himself.
it would be more. Two people would hold more power between the two, and it would be less likely to be stabbed in the back by the other one like he did. So he decided the rule of two, where they can only be two. So if one has an apprentice, eventually the apprentice or the master would have to go. So
Yeah, if
Yeah.
there's any expanded universe books you read, like the Darth Bane trilogy and like the First Timothy Zahn trilogy,
yeah, I haven't read the
top of the
Darth Bane
list
yet.
of like must read.
But I
That's
haven't.
great, dude.
I definitely heard of it.
He basically uses the Force to create a nuclear bomb and just lures all the Sith into this battle and then just blows them all up and fucking steals some random kid out of the rubble to be his apprentice.
Yeah, it's like they say, evil turns upon itself, and it's definitely been true through Star Wars. It's always happens. I mean,
Well, in
Darth
any
Vader
case,
turned good to betray the Emperor. But
there
still.
is a character that we have not mentioned, who is the Death Star commander, Grand Moff Tarkin, who was played by none other than old Peter Cushing.
Great job.
He is obviously like the dude in command that Darth Vader just kind of goes to and he listens to him a lot. And honestly, he is a strong character in the Empire to me, at least in this initial.
He's Grand Moff Tarkin. He's a Grand Moff Admiral, which is the highest rank you can possibly get under Emperor. So he's actually Darth Vader is actually not in the Imperial Army. He's the apprentice of the Emperor, and therefore he's strong and everything. But Tarkin is above him because he's actually the highest rank in the military.
I was trying to figure that out because it seemed like he was talking up to him when he was talking to him at that meeting that he ended up putting one of his commanders in a chokehold.
Yeah,
so
I mean, he's like, Vader, stop. He stopped.
Yeah,
Vader
he's like
stopped.
one of the only people that could put Vader in his place,
right.
because he's such a high-ranking fucking warlord.
Yeah, he's the highest ranking officer, and Vader, like I said, is not part of the Imperial Army. he's just the apprentice of the Emperor. So he has.
And in reality, Tarkin could probably tell the Emperor what's what too, because he's the head of the entire military. So it's like, without him, they can't really do too much.
Well, I don't know if you get away with that, because the Emperor. Yeah, I mean, you don't tell the Emperor nothing.
He's an effective commander. I doubt that the Emperor would do too much to him, or Tarkin to drop some reality on him or something. Because again, he's the head of his military arm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're more partners in a sense, I would think, than necessarily a subordinate type relationship.
That's true.
Well, in any case, after Obi-Wan Kenobi ends up giving him his father's saber, that's when he mentions that the robot, the R2-D2 unit, has a message for him. And ultimately, the message gets played. And after the message gets played, that's when he sits back and it was like, "Hey, Luke, you're going to have to come with me." And he's like, "No, I can't. I've got the harvest to deal with. I got to work with my uncle."
That's your uncle,
and so Luke goes and hurries off actually, they come across
Sandcrawler.
The Sandcrawler that has been destroyed. All the Jawas have been killed. And that's when
too accurate for sand people.
I know those memes saying to the contrary, but we all know Ben kids a little bit.
And that's when he thinks about his aunt and uncle at that moment. He's like, home, and he. Even though he goes off, Ben's like, "Don't go there, don't go," and he's
too dangerous.
And that's when we get that moment where he arrives and there's black smoke coming out of the little igloo like the thing, and you can see the skeletons of his aunt and uncle. Just that is just like a destroyful, that when we see that, that's like the most gore that we see in this particular film. That where we see the charred bodies. And
they don't have skin left; it's just bones left.
Correct. So he hurries back to where Ben was, and he's like, "Well, I could have told you."
It's like, well, I'm going to go with you now, and then Obi's like, they go to Mos Eisley, and they're like, they're filled with all the villainous scum of the world, and we'll find some of the best pilots. Some of the best pilots here, and
I always love though how like Obi-Wan is having friggin' C-3PO burn the Jawas. Like, I'm not touching those things.
Yeah. So they go in and Stormtrooper stop them and like, where you heading? And you just ask about the droids, and he's like, oh, the droids are for sale if you want them. And then of course he tells them these are not the droids you're looking for, and they repeat that, and they said move along, and then they say the same thing, move along, and Luke looks at him like, how'd you do that? He tells him this weak-minded can be controlled by the Force. So then they go into the cantina, and Obi-Wan goes off to find a pilot, and Luke is told that droids cannot be in here; they don't serve their kind. So he tells them to go out and stay by the land speeder.
And I like the cantina moment, because that's when we get a little bit of the atmosphere of like the planet, because then you realize that not everyone is friendly.
Oh yeah, definitely not. Because Luke is sitting there, and the thing next to him just looks at him and says something in a language that Luke doesn't understand.
Like you.
And then the guy next to him says, he doesn't like you. And he says, I'm sorry, I don't like you. You be careful. We're wanted men throughout blah blah blah. And Ben comes back and says, this one's not worth the trouble. And Luke's like, he just grabs Luke and throws him, and Obi-Wan just chops the other alien's arm off, kills this one, and and everyone's looking for a second. Then as soon as he's dead, everyone turns back to what they were doing.
Well, did you notice that the bartender dived like behind the bar, like he was scared little shit?
Yeah. So, everyone was watching what was happening for a second. As soon as it's over, everyone went back to the drinks. The music started back up like nothing happened. So
it wasn't
a big thing that 2 people died. It was just kind of a bigger thing, someone using a lightsaber, because they hadn't seen that kind of thing in quite a long time.
It's really like the first scene where you hardcore get that impression that it was very much inspired by like old samurai movies and gunslinger movies and stuff.
George Lucas.
It's perfectly done.
So that was well done. Then we see Chewie in the background when he was doing that, and then he tells Luke this is a second make to a ship that might work for us. And then we see they meet Han, and Han's going over the price, saying 10,000 credits, and Luke's like, we can almost buy a ship for that price, and Han's like, well, who's gonna fly it? You kidding? And he's like, I can't. I'm not so bad pilot myself. And
we'll give you
2,000 now, and another 15,000 when we reach Alderaan. And he's like, 17,000. You got a deal.
They never had any intention of paying Han.
And I love the fact how Han Solo introduced the Millennium Falcon part. Where
you're skipping the best part. You can't skip the Greedo part.
Well, no, this is before Greedo. This is before Greedo, though. He's saying you've never heard of the Millennium Falcon.
Oh yeah. And then Obi-Wan so cool, like, should I have? Even if he had heard it, he doesn't want to act like he has. He acts like cool, like, should I have? It's the ship that made the Kessel run in 2012 parsecs. Which We all know
Which
it's a
is
measure
famously inaccurate. Like a
Yeah,
parsec,
exactly.
I think, is a measure of distance or
It's a measure
whatever.
of distance
So.
instead of time.
It sounds cool as shit,
It's just
though.
exactly, and it's make believe. So in the Star Wars universe, we'll just pretend that it actually means what they say.
Yeah, it's more space opera than science fiction, you know. So I've
The
always
space
forgiven
opera,
that
it's
stuff.
science fiction. It's a little bit of
Yeah, the
it's for
science
comedy. It's a little bit of everything
loose.
in it.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Princess Leia is back on the Battle Star Station, and they are trying to get her to tell them where the Rebel Alliance base is, and she is just refusing it to tell anything, and that's when the that's when Peter Cushing's character basically says, well, you know what? I think it's time to demonstrate the power of this battle station.
You missed the droid.
The
The
Interrogator droid.
interrogation droid. That thing always scared the shit out of me.
Because I actually kind of laughed. Even at 4 years old, I thought the droid was not scary. The droid is probably the only part in Star Wars that I find is a little bit silly. That's just my take on that. You know, that's just how I felt about that one.
I think that's when it kind of gets a little Lovecraftian, because that thing has like tons of needles around it.
Leia looks at it like and stuff, and I just look at it like it's kind of funny, you know. It doesn't really look.
I looked at it as like an Eye of the Beholder in like Dungeons and Dragons.
It would have been much cooler as that, but yeah, I mean, to me, it looks like they tried to be menacing with it, and in my case, I think they failed with that. That's like the only bad thing I can ever say about anything in Star Wars, or the first movie, is that scene. It's just I don't find it scary at all. I find it more comical. But yeah, I just really want to skip over that part because I just really wanted to mention how I felt about that scene. But,
not a problem.
Interrogation droid.
Well, yeah. And then after that, that's when they end up showing basically, they know that Alderaan is a place that may her whole home planet.
Yeah, she tells them Dantooine is where the rebels are holding out. So
correct.
She gives them the planet, and he says Dantooine is too far out, so we're still gonna destroy Alderaan. And she's like, no, they're defenseless. They have no weapons or whatever. And then you see the Death Star turning on, and boom, and there goes Alderaan. And you see
and Ben. That comes into play later.
Actually, it's right then.
It comes into play when I think it flips back to Ben and them, because they are being apparently their presence in Tatooine, at least in downtown Tatooine, has been figured out, and because even though when they got into the place, Ben did this whole "we're not the droids we're looking for" thing, but the stormtroopers have figured out that they are there, the droids that they're looking for. And that's when we get the whole bounty hunter on their ass, who basically has followed them and points out, that's them.
That's an added scene, though. That wasn't in the original scene.
The bounty hunter.
The bounty hunter is an added scene, and then of course the next scene with Jabba the Hutt is an added
correct.
Scene. Which I really like the added scene with Jabba the Hutt.
I do like that that particular added scene.
Yeah,
that was shot. It existed. It's just they didn't have like the shit to.
It wasn't there. They didn't put it in the movie. It was they shot it, but they just didn't put it in the movie originally, and they added it later. I mean,
they did have to change the direction that Han Solo was walking in order to do the scene, which I think they did that with a computer.
It's great how he walks on the tail of the body of Jabba the Hutt, and Jabba's face is like, but never says anything like, I'll kill you for that, or smacks him or anything. He doesn't even really mention it.
And
I
then,
guess
of course, you get
originally he was thinking about doing it with a stop motion, like superimposed over the dude or whatever, but they didn't end up doing it. I'd like to have seen a stop motion Jabba the Hutt just because.
Yeah.
Well, and ultimately, we get him saying, "Well, Jabba, you are just a wonderful human being." And
Yeah, which is great.
he ends up starting to go up the ramp of a ship, and that's when the stormtroopers come in and they start blasting. He starts blasting back, and Luke starts blasting, and and that's when we get them on the ship, and then they get into their
It's like,
places.
get us out of here.
And while they're on the ship, that is when Ben starts telling him about this force. And the best way that can describe this is that the force is something to behold. I mean, it's made of everything around us, the earth,
It's in
the sky.
everything. It surrounds us. It binds us together. It partially controls everything, and you can learn to control the force yourself. Basically, it's like magic, in just a different word.
And Han is just like
Star Wars.
space wizards.
Yeah. So basically, the force is magic, and
And basically anyone who uses the force has like superpowers. Like you can have telekinesis, you can have precognition, you can move things around at will, and you can mind bend anyone one you come across. You can make the weaker of mind. You can make the weaker mind think whatever the fuck you want. So.
Yeah, which kind of makes me wonder, since such things are possible in that story, how's it possible there are people who don't believe in it, like Han Solo?
Yeah, Han Solo does not believe in the force at first. I've traveled everywhere. I've seen all kinds of things, but nothing in this universe controls my destiny. He said what he says. Boy, is he wrong.
Yeah, but like, if those things are possible, there have to be people who have witnessed such things happening.
Yeah.
So how's it possible it's not a proven fact that it exists and that there can still be?
Yeah, Han is like it's luck, and Obi-Wan is saying, in my experience, no such thing as luck. So both opposites on what the other is saying. Han doesn't believe in the force, and Obi-Wan
in his
doesn't believe in luck.
defense, like Jedi have been gone for a long time at this point, so
yeah,
it's understandable that people could be skeptical of it at this point in the timeline, because at this point, basically, Obi-Wan is the last Jedi. Unless you count Yoda, which we don't know about yet, but so it's like he's got to kind of just take him at his word, and obviously
there's actually a few other Jedis now, but we don't know it. Ezra.
Well, yeah, but in the context of the film,
right?
Like
exactly,
they've been gone forever. Like isn't it like 30 years or something like this at this point?
Yeah, so pretty much. Well, I mean, during that's when the first purge happened, and then Darth Vader spent that time hunting down and killing Jedi, which I thought would be a great series, or even a movie or something if they actually did the actual hunt of the Vader going around hunting down Jedi and killing them.
Right. But I mean, it's like Han's probably in his 30s, so in his entire life, he's never seen a Jedi, as far as we know.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that he'd be skeptical, I guess, and it also plays into his sort of free-spirited scoundrel type personality.
Totally. I mean, he believes in luck, which, I mean, in the Star Wars, they're both right. Han Solo is one lucky motherfucker. But the Force does actually exist too. So they're both right. There's both luck and the Force.
Because in Solo, we find out that Han Solo actually won won the ship at a card game.
Well, no,
Basically.
he said that in Empires when Lando's like said my ship, and Han Solo said, "Hey, I won that from you fair and square." So
He loses it back to
so
Lando for a while again in the books too.
we knew that he won it. We just didn't know how, and we knew it was a Saga. Found out it was a Saga game to the novels, but we just still didn't know the exact details until we saw Solo. So
Speaking of games, I do like this space chest scene where
oh yeah,
obviously R2 was like beating the Wookiee, and he's like, you don't want a sore loser out of Wookiee, and Chewie's like puts his arms back and looking at him like, yeah, you don't want to mess with me. And
he's like someone worries about offending a droid, and he's like, well, Wookiees are known to rip the arms off from limbs off from people they're losing to, and that's when he puts his arms back, and then C-3PO was like, new strategy. Let the Wookiee win.
Fun fact, we actually got a video game version of that 3D chess for, I think it was the Sega CD. Yeah.
Really?
Oh,
wow. But in any case, it's shortly after that where they start seeing like the debris of an asteroid field, or at least that's what it looks like. But then they get tailed by one of the TIE fighters. Is it?
Well, I think it's that they come out of light speed and they're supposed to be where Alderaan is.
And so it's like, this is the coordinates for Alderaan, but there's no Alderaan. It's like, how can a whole planet disappear?
Well,
and that's when they notice the ship falling.
And we also got that great line from Ben as saying, "I felt great disturbance in the Force."
Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
like 1,000, like a million voices.
A million voices cried out at once, and they were suddenly silenced.
And like the whole reason that the TIE fighter is suspicious is because they're not long range fighters.
Yeah,
so, and it's way out in space, so it's got to be going.
They were followed or something, and then they're like, "Oh, we'll just blast it." And Obi's when it's too small, just let it go, And Han's like stubborn about it, wanting to chase it. And then they're like, wait, there's not supposed to be a moon here. And then Obi-Wan's like, there's no moon. There's a space station. And Han's like, that's too big to be a space station. And then And then a few minutes later, they get pulled to the moon space station and realize, oh shit, it is a space station.
Oh yeah.
And Han's like, you're not going to get me with a fight. Shut everything down. I love that line because, you think he's gonna fight, and his way of fighting is to shut everything down. And of course,
so Boris, what do you think about everything up until this point?
Well, I'm sick as you may have noticed, so I'm sorry if I'm not as active as I'd usually be. Like I said, this was today I rewatched this movie after not seeing it for quite some time. So yeah, it was interesting to actually refresh my memory on the actual story of what's going on in the movie, rather than just who is fighting whom and so on.
Okay. And what do you think about this moment where the Millennium Falcon has gotten like a tractor beam and is being pulled into the Death Star?
Well, it was when it happened, I kind of did remember it from earlier, but yeah, it was kind of badass. But yeah, I was remembering things from earlier, and I kind of knew what was going to happen. I knew they would end up in the Death Star and have all the fights there and everything.
Okay. So ultimately, what happens is basically they're pulled into the Death Star, and the lucky thing is that the Millennium Falcon is like a cornucopia of like hiding spaces.
Yeah, smuggler action.
So they were actually able to hide under the metal floorboards of the thing while they were boarding the damn thing, and then completely like kill like the first two stormtroopers that were guarding the fucking thing in order to go and go on their separate ways, because one of the things that needed to be done was the tractor beam and whatever needed to be shut off so that they could ultimately escape. So that's kind of where Ben comes into play. He ultimately says, "I will go do this, but so you guys go do that." And basically, that's kind of what they do. They end up going and rescuing Prince Leia, even though it wasn't exactly Han Solo's first idea, but the promise of riches and gold or whatever the fuck money is for the Star Wars universe.
It would be credits. It would be credits at that point. Imperial credits mostly. Like in the Outer Rim, they have their own currency mostly. They don't go by what most go by. But
yeah, the exchange rate isn't great either. I remember that coming up a couple of times in the books where it's like, what am I going to do with these? That these aren't going to turn into very many Imperial credits back home. Like,
yeah, it really depends on where you're from. It's kind of like the way our world is. You have different money from the U.S. has different money than Canada and Europe, and they all have the different money. So some planets will have
there is another film and book that mentions a currency as credit, and that would be Battlefield Earth.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly.
What a crap piece that was. Holy shit. I saw that in the theater.
Oh, I wish it would have been. They need to remake that.
It could have been great.
Remake that.
That could have been like the Star Wars of the 90s, but they dropped the ball.
Yeah, I'm not sure John Travolta was exactly the right way to go, but it is what is. But getting back to this, I think the scene where we get Luke going in and rescuing Prince Leia, that's kind of an initial scene, because he's like, oh, the helmet. I'm Luke Skywalker. I was sent here by Ben Kenobi. I'm here to rescue you. Ben Kenobi?
He goes, aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper? And he goes, huh? And he goes, oh, the uniform. And then he takes off his helmet and he goes, I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue. I'm here with it. And then she's like, who? I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here with Ben Kenobi. Ben Kenobi, where is he? She's actually, if you notice, she's nice to Luke. Right when she meets him, she's nice to Luke throughout the whole scene. The second she meets Han, she's like immediately like claws out at Han. She's not nice to Han at all. And they kind of clash, but you definitely can tell the second they clashed, you see sparks. I saw the sparks between them. That's why I said I thought they were a great couple. I never saw Luke and Leia together. I always thought it should have been Han and Leia.
Well, in any case, I do like the whole fact that they used Chewie in some handcuffs to come up to the prison thing.
Yeah, it was a great idea.
Thing to begin with. And then they started blasting everything and everybody, and that's when he gets the we get the whole Han Solo over the intercom. He's like, yeah, we had a power malfunction. We don't need anyone. Wait a minute. What is your clearance?
Damn, shoots it.
Fuck this shit.
Chewie, we're gonna have company.
Yeah, it's a good enough solution.
Yeah, hands not the talker, the thing. Hands the shoot first.
Well, anyways, on either side of that like whole tunnel area, they're getting shot at, and that's when Princess Leia ends up taking the gun and shooting an area of like the floor, and we see them start to go down this garbage chute.
Into the chute, Flyboy. And
And then
Chewie go in, and Chewie's just like not having it. He's like, it smells in there, and he's like, get in there, and he pushes him in. And, they open in there. And...
Chewie's another one where you know exactly what he's saying
every
single time.
You may not speak Wookiee like Han Solo does, but you definitely can understand what he's saying, what he's thinking, and you know, like the whole part where Han Solo
and he basically kicks him in there.
When they first see the Millennium Falcon and Luke says, "What a piece of junk," and he says, "Well, Skywalker Council made special modifications." You know, Chewie's sitting there saying, "Motherfucker, I helped you."
and that's when you get Han Solo talking to Luke and saying, "Either I really hate her, or I'm just beginning to like her."
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting to see all that interaction among characters. I had forgotten a lot of that since the last time I had seen the movie, like all the sexual tension between Han and Leia and how much focus they put on being kind of selfish in this part of the story and so on.
There was definitely some comedy, definitely between Luke, Han, and Princess Leia, between Princess Leia and Han Solo, and of course between C-3PO and R2-D2. I swear, the more the film went on, the more harsher C-3PO got insulting towards the little dude. I felt bad for him, but in any case,
Archie got his chops in all the time when Archie said something and C-3PO says, "Watch your mouth." But the worst part when I felt about R2 was, we have to go back a little bit, when R2 got him to take out the bolt, and then he stopped the video altogether. And then Luke leaves, and C-3PO says, "No, I don't think Luke likes you at all." And Archie's like, "Oh," and then and I don't like you either. And Archie's like, you can tell he's really upset that no one likes him. And C-3PO is really a bully and a meanie.
I think that's why he runs off to begin with, you know, because obviously he's not wanted here. So why worry about that when I've got this mission on hand?
He's got this mission, and nobody wants me around, so I'm just going to leave by myself. You're right, and C-3PO bullied him into doing it. You don't think of C-3PO as being a bully, but he was definitely a bully to R2 at times.
Oh yeah. I would agree, but ultimately they are in this garbage heap, and all of a sudden Luke starts to feel that there's something in the water.
Yeah, this part always scared the shit out of me.
It's your imagination, kid. But you forgot about the scene where they shoot, they get down the chute and they shoot their weapon, and Luke's yelling at him, "Forget it! I already tried that. You'll kill us." Because it's magnetic.
That reminds me, we never actually found out what that creature was that emerged from the water.
It was obviously some bacterial creature that had just grown from multiple years of garbage.
If I remember right from the books, it's a thing that's in there to break down a lot of the excess waste. And, so it eats all the stuff that's in there that's not metal. And then, it's easier for the trash compactor to, like, squish it down. I forget which book it was, but they do explain what that creature is.
Probably going to start.
Yeah, because I was saying earlier that obviously the books came later than the movie. Yeah. Because that's when we get like a whole lot of backstory to the Star Wars universe in the novels.
Indeed.
But
I'm
not necessarily
through the novelization. Actually,
I have not read the novelization of the movies yet.
It's
That's
been
one thing I've
several
not
years,
done.
but they're good. Real
Yeah,
good.
I've heard that. I figured they would be. But that I started after Return of the Jedi, the Thrawn trilogy.
Those were kind
Gone
of
forward from that,
like
so-
the original special editions, I guess you could say, where they added stuff was the novelizations back in the day, you know, because it
Yeah.
fleshed it out a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely something I'm going to do one of these days. Read them, read the books when I'm done reading the future stuff.
But anyways, we get this whole strangulation thing with the monster, and you see Luke disappear, and for a moment you think he might die, but all of a sudden he resurfaces after after they hear something start to move, and they're like, "What happened?" "I don't know. He just let me go," and that's when the walls start to close in. And midway through the walls closing, that's when he realized, "Oh my God, I've got this hand thing in my hand. I'm gonna call C-3PO." Meanwhile, C-3PO and R2-D2 have secluded themselves away in like some storage area in the fucking thing. The stormtroopers come in. Basically tell them, "Hey, we heard someone go towards the prison, some crazy dude go towards the prison complex," and they're like, "Oh, well, let's send some dudes right away." And so they do, and then there's one security, one stormtrooper left, and they're like, "Oh, I think I need some parts to myself. I think we're just going to go to maintenance."
Yeah, 3PO is usually pretty bumbling, but he can think on his feet when he needs to.
And it's funny how you say that C-3PO trusts everyone. Likewise, the stormtroopers just trusted the droids. If the droids,
oh well, yeah,
tell
those
them,
stormtroopers are
you know,
conscripted. They're
because
just doing what they're
stormtroopers
told,
are
you know.
droids are normally not loyal to
Well,
anyone. They
it's-
just
it's-
tell the
I'm a king,
facts.
yeah.
It's only later that I mean, in the first three episodes that we find out that these dudes are just like clone droids, you know, in a sense, you know. At least that's
No, they're stormtroopers. Stormtroopers are regular human beings. They are not clone troopers. Clone troopers are different.
Yeah, typically they're conscripted, meaning like they're forced into service by whoever,
right,
you know, whatever
exactly.
imperial planets.
They
are
go
under
to a
their
different planet, basically says, "Join us or die." So they take all the kids, all the teenagers, force them into servitude. They force them into being a stormtrooper. You know, so you know some of them obviously end up moving up in the Imperial Navy because they actually like being evil sons of bitches. Where others are just trying to survive.
I just remember that there were all these clones that were made in the likeness of Boba Fett, and
those
that
are
was the clone
troopers.
troopers.
They're like the prototypes to the stormtroopers.
Those are the clone
troopers.
troopers. And the Emperor decided he didn't want to do them because he'd rather have some free thinkers, where they could, you know, think a little bit on their feet instead of like the clones. And
the clones could at least hit shit though when they shot.
well, like I said in the beginning, a lot of rebels died. The stormtroopers were hitting all those rebels, so they can hit. It just
It's more
when
of
it
a
comes to
blanket pattern, you know.
anyone
like
really important, they miss. So,
it's not that they're accurate, it's just that they shoot a lot, you know.
well, according to Ben Kenobi, they're accurate.
More accurate
we know
than
he
sand
shoots
people.
a little bit.
You know?
Well, ultimately, we see C-3PO pick up the ham mic, and obviously they end up like going down to like the ground floor somehow, and that's when they plug it. R2 plugs in, and they try to figure out where Luke is, and that's when R2 gets that brain aneurysm of, well, why don't you turn your mic on? Oh,
No,
that's
it's not
brilliant.
about that.
I forgot about that. So he does, and that's when he speaks to him. He's like, C-3PO.
Shut down the garbage disposal on the defensive block. Shut them all down. No, shut them all down.
Yeah, that's such a tense scene, man. When they're
It
about to
is
get
great.
squished.
And then when they start celebrating that they're alive, a C-3PO thinks they're screaming in terror.
Yeah,
And they go,
that's
curse this body, I was too slow, and then he's like, we're okay, and then we're like, open this up, we're at such and such seat, blah, 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 which I don't remember, sorry. But they tell him where they are, and R2 opens it up so they can get out.
Meanwhile,
it's neat that they kind of recreate, or at least Harrison Ford got to somewhat recreate that whole scene later in Temple of Doom, like when he's in that booby-trapped room and the ceiling's gonna squish him or whatever, and that girl has to like reach into that gross little cavity
with the snakes, which he hates.
Yeah. So, meanwhile, Darth Vader evidently notices a presence on board, because you get the whole. I feel a presence I've not felt in ages, for a long time.
My nipples haven't tingled like this in a dog's age.
Oh my!
So he obviously.
Master touches me.
So he obviously has figured out what that presence is, and so his his job in here for the rest of the movie is basically for the rest of these scenes is I must find my old master, so after we get that whole Obi-Wan one scene where he's found the reactor, found where to turn down the power and turn off the thing, and he makes it known that there's a presence to those stormtroopers, and then of course he runs smack dab into Darth Vader, and that's when they clash, and that's a very good scene because you get those that line where he's like, "If you strike me down, I'll become more powerful than you can ever imagine."
But before that, Darth Vader's line where he says, Obi-Wan, I've been waiting a long time for this. First I was the apprentice, but now I'm the master. And then Obi-Wan says, only master of evil, Darth. And then he says, if you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can imagine. And Obi-Wan planned it for Darth Vader to strike him down at the perfect moment right when Luke was looking. And so it would fire up Luke to defeat Darth Vader for one thing, and also he could be one with the Force and be more powerful.
Before that, we get that whole Luke Skywalker being Indiana Jones for a moment with that Star Wars grappling.
He blows up the bridge so they can't get across, and so they have to shoot the way. And then he has this little cord on the utility belt, and he throws it up there, and Leia holds onto him, and they swing across. It's awesome scene.
Well,
and then of course you can't forget the whole Han Solo charge.
Oh yeah, he's great. Well, what good will do us if he gets himself killed?
Well, I actually have a question about the scene between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. Do I remember correctly that when this movie was originally made, that it was supposed to be a standalone movie, that they weren't planning the
it was
sequels
supposed to be standalone. They hadn't decided if they were going to do the other movies yet. So at the time, it was...
Which is why I think it was originally called just Star Wars.
It was.
Yep.
It was just called Star
Yeah,
Wars.
well, in that case...
Star Wars Episode 4, but that was it. There was no New Hope.
In that case, since in this movie they weren't mentioning the whole thing about becoming one with the Force, then what was originally meant to be Obi-Wan's reason why he killed him?
Well, Obi-Wan already knew that he'd become one with the Force because Qui-Gon Jinn already had done that, although we hadn't seen that scene because that movie hadn't come out yet. But according to that
wasn't a part of the story when the movie was made. That's what I'm asking.
The easiest way to explain it is that, yes, it was a shot in the dark when they made this. Lucas, I think, would have liked to do sequels And there's some debate, he's claimed over the years that he had all the other stuff purely written out. Really, he had like some general lore and ideas for movies at the time.
Yeah,
I don't think he had it as concrete as he'd like people to believe later on.
I think
so he knew that there was like.
I think these three initial films, A New Hope.
Yeah, he definitely had one penned out more, but the sequels he did not.
Yeah. No, nothing was really set in stone.
So basically, he had the general idea that there
was in the movie for him to have fleshed it out,
Yeah, it's exactly that's what I was getting at. So he basically knew that there might be he might be able to do more with it, but in the context of this, you just kind of get the general idea because Obi-Wan had said earlier that it binds all things, the Force, and all this stuff. So it's sort of just vaguely implied in this one that he might be able to
Obi-Wan
ascend to another level.
His old wise and a master at this point, so.
So to answer your question, Boris, I don't think that it was necessarily concrete what was going to happen with it, but it was just meant to be mystical, like, oh, he's probably going to become a green Force ghost later or something.
Yeah, but I mean, he ends up helping Luke in the ship later, so
This movie was originally supposed to be standalone, and it never explained what Obi-Wan supposedly meant when he said
But if you watch it and he ends up helping Luke, he says, "Luke, run," and then later on in the X-Wing, he says, "Luke, use the Force. Don't use the computer. Use the Force."
Luke.
So he becomes more powerful because he's able to talk to Luke without physically being there.
You could argue that you might be. I mean, I could see someone, if they're not thinking too hard on it, maybe thinking that Luke's just imagining that's what he would say, but he is totally talking to him,
Right.
Yeah, they don't really go into explaining that he's going to become a ghost, and then they're later going to like swap him out for Ewan McGregor. Like that doesn't fucking make any sense. You don't come back as a ghost as like your younger self.
I seen a meme that was so funny where it showed the Anakin ghost, and then it showed the youngling ghost, and they're going, "What the fuck's he doing here?" They go to the younglings because he killed them, and they're like, "Wait, now he's on the good side because." Wait, he killed us.
But in any case, we have them all kind of eventually congregating down on the level where the ship is, and we get that whole Princess Leia a moment where she's like, "You came in that thing? I'm a little bit more impressed with you."
You came in that thing. I actually said that's what she said, or type thing, because that's another. You came in that thing. That's a great one.
Yeah.
Dave, you always make me laugh with your impersonations.
Well, like I said, I mean, I said this in the beginning before you joined, Mo, that Star Wars has a lot of great lines that you can use. That's what she said. Or we used to do on Facebook. There was a thing where it say, name your sex life using Star Wars quotes. And I said, like, joking, like, me, the boy, 2 droids, no questions asked. Or get out of there, do no good back there, or you came in that thing, you're braver than I thought. So yeah, there's a lot of great one-liners where you can really laugh. And also, I was thinking when I saw Vader and Obi-Wan, and Vader goes, "I've been waiting for you for a long time," and then I'm thinking now, and you don't have the high ground. Now you don't have the high ground, so he's gonna win. But anyways, back to the story.
Definitely. So they get themselves into the Millennium Falcon. They take up and off, and they make their way towards the rebel base in whichever planet that they apparently are on. What is the planet that they go to?
Yavin 4.
Okay,
It's actually a
Yavin.
moon. It's not a planet.
Okay,
They're actually on a planet moon. Planet moon, I guess you can call it. It's called Yavin 4. There's 4 moons, all Yavins, and that's where they are.
but they do not know that there is a homing beacon that is on board.
Leia does, because that's the only excuse. That's the only reason that ease of their excuse, she says. And Han Solo says, "Easy." He says, "Not this ship, sister. No one's tracking us." And
which means they don't have much time in order to get the plans to Yavin 4. Tell their fighters. Have a battle plan set up, and and you get the whole "I'm in it for money" speech from Harrison
and
Ford.
Like, even if I wasn't, you don't think I'll be crazy enough to stick around here. And he's like, "Hey, why don't you come with us? You're pretty good in a fight." And Luke's like, "Look around, look what they're up against." And and so then he's like, "What good is a reward if you're not around to spend it?" And he takes off, and Luke. And then Luke's,
they also have a money
May
speech.
The Force be with you.
They also have a money speech when they first meet too, because I think when she first gets on the Millennium Falcon, he's like, "I'm in it for the money.
I'm not in it for your revolution. I'm in it for the money. I expect to be paid." And she's like, "If money is all you love, then that's what you'll get." Yeah, but so he anyways, so he says, "May the Force be with you," to Luke. Luke just looks at him, doesn't even say anything back. He walks away. He's discussed with him, and he's like, says to Leia, like, "I don't think he really cares about anyone but himself," and and Leia's like, he's got to follow his own path, and I mean, to be fair, Han does have a bounty on his head. So he really does got to play a job of the back.
And so this is where R2-D2's importance comes in real quick. He's got the whole diagram of the battle star inside his robot self, and you got that whole squadron of young men listening to that old guy stating, "This is exactly where you need to go. This is the reactor. Okay, boys, we need you to get into your fighter planes, like as of yep, now, and we need you to keep in touch with us so that we can destroy the Death Star." So they all pack themselves into these fighter things.
X-wings.
Cool. Yeah, X-wing fighters, and
they first said that it's impossible to shoot the small 2-meter, and Luke says no, they're not much smaller than a Womp Rat, which he used to shoot back home. Free eye. So
those Womp Rats with his T-16.
Yeah, exactly. So Luke is like, it was easy for a computer to do.
This is also a great moment for him to catch up with his buddies that had already been in the academy too.
Biggs was his best friend.
Yep.
Those characters I couldn't even remember from the previous time I saw this movie.
Really?
Well, in any case, this is the moment where we get kind of like these dudes get. Apparently, they have a pilot and a wingman. These X fighters, and often times, and Luke's had R2 on the back of his unit, and
this is an astromech droid.
How many of these X fighters are in this squadron? Do you know?
Oh, there's a few squadrons. There's Blue Squadron, Red Squadron, Green Squadron. So I think it seems to be like 5 apiece. I mean, they don't actually say, but I believe it's somewhere around 5 apiece. Because that's the highest number you actually hear them say out loud. So that's just more of an assumption that there's five. And Also, then you get the scene where they're putting R2 in, and they're like, he looks a little beat up. Do you want a new R2? And Luke's like, not on your life. We've been through a lot together. So he insists on having R2 with him.
Well, and ultimately, they end up having to go down this long, like tunnel that's between the machinery on the Death Star,
with guns shooting at them at the same time. They're going through this
correct
narrow area.
These TIE fighters come in behind them, and one of them, the ringleader, is Darth Vader. They just don't know it.
Yeah, and of course we get a scene where Porkins says, they're like, pull up. And he's like, oh, I got it. Boom, he pulls up. So he should have listened. He didn't have it. He did, but he didn't. Porkins, we lost our Porkins. So.
Well, and you get a couple of them saying, "I'm hit," and
yeah,
and
the first one to actually shoot at the tunnel was Wedge. Wedge is Wedge Antilles is the leader. He's the leader of the entire fleet, the X-wing fleet, and he goes in there and shoots, and he doesn't quite make it in. He says, "Didn't go in." He's like, "What's away?"
And another thing, they seem to have this like targeting machine where it just shows like the distance of when they're getting to it, and
yes, the computer.
When it comes down to Luke having to use the target machine, that's when he gets that voice of Obi-Wan
again saying, "Use the Force, Luke." And then he turns off the computer, and then of course they're like, "Luke, why did you turn off the computer?" Now, I think if this was real, like a Navy or Army or whatever, they would have told him, "Put your computer back on."
Yes.
But they never did. I mean, he probably wouldn't have listened either way and just did it. But they would have definitely said, "Put the computer back on," because they wouldn't have believed that he could have done it without the computer.
In any case, obviously the TIE fighters just pick off the X fighters one by one until it's down to just Luke, and then of course R2 gets hit, and he's like, "I just lost
R2." I was so worried. And of course you see Vader and his two ships coming down on Luke, and they're about to get him, and all of a sudden the two ships next to Vader fly away, and they're looking like, what? And you see the Millennium Falcon flying, and the Vader ship gets hit. He doesn't get destroyed, but he gets hit, and he goes spiraling away. You see Vader like,
I just thought that's hilarious.
Away, because they can't kill off.
I love the sounds of the TIE fighter.
I have to say, for the most part, the Empire has some really friggin' awesome vehicles. They really do. Like the Rebellion had to piece together whatever they can get. Whereas the Empire could build whatever they wanted. So the Empire definitely had a lot of cool vehicles and the cool tricks.
Yeah, the TIE fighters themselves are just iconic.
They're great shit. To me, they remind me of a fast car. They're very fast, very maneuverable. But if they actually get hit or something, they're toast because they're not, they're made to be broken. Basically,
they just look like little butterflies. Butterfly units that have like satellite dishes like on either end. But they're really only meant for like one frickin' person.
They're super maneuverable. It's like,
and I can see the relation to like that of like a Japanese kamikaze.
Yes, and see, I was going to bring that up because there was like an issue of Starlog back in the day when this was like newer, or still kind of new, and someone wrote in asking about like whether or not the whole dogfight scenes were inspired by like World War II dogfights and stuff. And for whatever reason, the Starlog editors got like defensive about it in their response to the dude in the letter section. Like he was trying to say they ripped it off or something, and it's like, no, he's just saying clearly there's, an inspiration there between World War II like dogfights and the Star Wars.
Well, I know there was.
He said himself that he got many inspirations from different places. I mean, he knows he didn't just come up with everything, by himself.
In fact,
what he did was he put inspirations of a lot of things together and put them together.
Which is just how anything is created.
He did a great job putting everything together. but obviously he got inspirations from other places.
Well, yeah.
I just
and
always
think
found
one-
it comical because you could tell whoever at Starlog was like that responded to this dude's letter was obviously like a super fan, and they took offense to it or something. I just always thought that was funny.
Well, it's obvious that that the Empire itself was definitely hugely modeled after the German war party,
Yeah,
Nazis.
For sure. Even their uniforms are similar and stuff. So.
Yeah, actually, today was the first time I was made think of that when I saw the grey uniforms. That was the first time I ever wondered, hey, was this inspired by Nazi uniforms?
Oh yeah, and even the idea of them building these big super weapons and stuff is totally like shit the Germans were actually doing back then, you know?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
If the Germans could have built a Death Star, they would have.
If not the Germans, it was the Russians. You know, the Russians always trying to outshine the Germans. But in any case, we
I never paid attention to that before.
So we get the this whole part where Han Solo has actually come back to help out the kid, and he's like, "Hey, kid, take your shot." And that's what when he takes his shot, and it's a moment of silence, basically.
Well,
when he shoots.
There is a scene on the Death Star itself where they said we've analyzed their tactics, and there is a small chance. And then he says to Tarkin, "You want me to, get your ship ready?" He's like, "Leave on our moment of victory. You overestimate their chances, And so he fully believes that they're gonna, and they're setting up to destroy Yavin 4, and they're pumping it up and everything. And then Luke goes in and he makes that shot just before they're about to fire and destroy Yavin 4. So he blows up the Death Star, seconds before, and killing one of the greatest villains of all time, Grand Moff Tarkin.
Oh yeah.
But luckily, Vader was not on board, because Vader was sent away by Han Solo in his ship, and he's still around. So we couldn't have had Vader die, because he's too valuable and too evil.
Well, in any case, they come back, and of course, we get that whole scene where R2 is coming out of the X-Fighter, and you feel all bad for him because he looks like he's not going to come back from that.
And this is where C-3PO shows that he does love R2. If any of his parts can help to save R2, he'll gladly give them away. Like, oh wow, C-3PO really does love him. Even he gives him crap and he bullies him, but he does love him. He's like the older brother that always picks on that younger brother, but he still loves him.
Well, in any case, we get this whole ending here where Han Solo and Luke Skywalker get their Scarecrow entrance into Oz, where they're both like brimming with pride, and it's like they're and Leia's like smiling on both of them, like what kinds of erotic thoughts are going through her mind at that moment? Who will she go next?
To take Han back to her royal suite and recreate the trash compactor scene with the tentacle.
Two men, one princess.
Either that or about that threesome with Jabba that she's been thinking of lately. So,
oh boy, I can't wait till we cover that
one. She chokes him to death.
Either that or Jabba just sits on them both and just like flails them to death.
Then we get the infamous bit where they both get medals and Chewie gets left out. Those motherfuckers are racist.
But now the Empire is supposed to be the one that discriminates against non-humans, okay? But the Rebellion clearly discriminated against Chewie because he didn't get a medal. He was there on this Millennium Falcon. He helped Han Solo just as much, to help, knock the TIE pilots out to help Luke. He should have gotten the freaking medal, and he never got a medal. Where's Chewie's medal? That's
arguably he was the key to them infiltrating the place and being able to rescue her too.
Exactly. So he definitely deserved his medal, and that was one mistake that they made. they should have given him his medal.
Of
We're not
course,
giving one to the space bear. He could just.
of course, we get C-3PO all shiny like the Tin Man of Oz, and looking kind of like the Golden Emmy, but but
Just because they modeled the Emmy after him.
did we get a ghostly figure of Ben Kenobi at the end here? Or?
No.
Okay, so that didn't happen until like the second or third movie.
That didn't happen until Empire Strikes Back.
Okay.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much the end of it, basically, because then we get the da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Oh yeah, by the way, Dave, can we hear your impersonation of R2-D2?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'll accept it. Yeah, man. I mean, this movie works so good. It worked. So, it was a fun fact, dude from Police Academy actually did his voice. Not true, but it's fun to think about.
I do like when R2-D2 does scream.
Yeah, it's great.
It's more like.
Yeah, he definitely has that scream down pat, and you know it's R2. It's been imitated, never duplicated.
So I guess at this point in time, we're going to be talking about the production value of this film. So Mo, what did you think about the production of this particular?
Oh, it's amazing, dude. And I mean, obviously, well built. Some of the stuff is still out there, like that crate dragon skeleton in the desert is still there. You know, it was leagues beyond anything that had been done at that point, and still to this day, arguably, the original Star Wars trilogy has never quite been duplicated in terms of large scale special effects and miniatures and set design and everything like that. It's legitimately fucking insane. That's why it still holds up so well, is because it was all meticulously crafted so well that you don't need to change much about it, you know?
Yeah.
Well, and I think they went leagues of anything with colorization as time went on, because when they come out with the digitally mastered editions of the film, they definitely looked more brighter. Things weren't so fuzzy, you know, and you could get a sense of the characters and the way the special effects were brought out better as time went on. You know, I think they did a phenomenal job in these films. They did some world building. They definitely centered around a lot of characters, and as the films went on, I think different species and different characters in the universe were kind of like, you know, cool for us to view. I mean, eventually we get to see more of like where the Wookiees come from. Eventually, you know.
Oh God, the Star Wars holiday special. We've covered that. I think, you know, it's important to say, like, even in the original trilogy, this first one, A New Hope, or just Star Wars, whatever you want to call it, tends to get overshadowed by the other ones a little bit. And that's understandable. But when you look at it as a standalone piece of science fiction, it works great as like just a standalone film, you know? So it's no surprise in hindsight looking back on it that it was spun into a bunch more films, because it's just such a solid of filmmaking and science fiction that, you know, it'd be impossible for a studio not to want to make more of these, you know. But when you take all that aside and just look at Star Wars as its own thing, it's a pretty perfectly put together movie. It's a fun little space adventure. It has a hell of a climax, you know, and it ends on a high note. You're just super hyped when that music kicks in at the end again, and you're like, I can totally understand why people saw this dozens of times in the theater because you'd never seen anything like it, and it ends on such a high note that you just want to experience it all again, like immediately.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I kind of glazed over was James Earl Jones' voice.
Definitely.
James Earl Jones is a distinguished man of color that I remember him on like some bedtime stories thing, but I specifically remember him for Field of Dreams and what was it, the River Niger line that he's well known for, But
Conan the Barbarian, that's always the main one I think of.
How could you all forget Mufasa?
Oh yeah,
I never watched it.
He's talking about the Lion King.
I know what it is. I'm sorry.
Oh, dude, you should watch the Lion King.
Hey,
it's solid.
I watched the Lion King in a drive-through theater. How dare you?
It's great. That's one of those classic modern Disney flicks before they went to shit.
Of course, the same year that the Lion King came out, The Client did, and The Mask. So that was entertaining. But
yeah, James Earl Jones kills it. I mean, the Darth Vader voice is iconic. This
It
first
really is.
one, I always feel bad for David Prowse because he thought that his voice was going to be in the movie for this first one. In the sequels, he knew that he was like going to be voiced over by James Earl Jones. But in this first one, he was throwing down, trying to like act, and then he got voiced over later.
Oh.
There's like a whole documentary about him that goes more into it. I guess he was pretty hurt by it at first, which is understandable.
Well, no wonder.
Yeah. Now, I want to mention one other thing. We mentioned the Christmas special. I just watched a documentary about Boba Fett, and Boba Fett was actually in the Christmas special a good 2 years before he was introduced in Empire Strikes Back. So we actually saw the very first thing of Boba Fett in the Christmas special. I had seen the Christmas special when I was a kid. I don't think I've seen it since. So I actually forgot that Boba Fett was in that. So that was a little interesting tidbit, and that I saw last night. And after I watched Star Wars, I watched.
Isn't it Mobius that animates that part in the special, Dave? I don't remember if we.
Yeah,
I think it is Mobius, and he was super famous, like European artist in Heavy Metal magazine and stuff back in the day. So that whole animated sequence with Boba Fett just rules because the art style is so crazy and awesome.
Definitely. What did you think about the special effects, Boris, or the production?
Well, I think they're amazing, of course, although the version I saw was definitely a remastered one, so of course it looks modern. It looks, if I hadn't known when the movie was made, I probably wouldn't have even noticed that it's
Did you, when you first saw this, you saw it without the added features?
When I saw it the first time, who knows? I was 8 years old or so. Back then I wasn't able to notice such things so much. But yeah, now I would kind of like to track the original unedited version down and see what that was really like.
It's magical, dude. I didn't even bother watching the extended version for this viewing because I just refuse to watch those.
I watched the extended second cleanup version, just because I wanted to be able to talk about the differences between the original and the redone, and because there's a lot of points, and people definitely are in disagreement about whether they like the added scenes or not, and then there's some scenes that they like and some scenes they don't. I like all the scenes. I mean, the band played a little bit longer.
Well, in all honesty, I don't have a problem with the remastering and so on because that's what prevents the movie from getting old. No matter how young audience get into the Star Wars franchise.
It doesn't look like it was made in 1977. It just the digital remastered version looks like it could have came out this year.
Honestly, even the original version still holds up. Like, I get what you guys are saying, and there's
The
truth
original
to that for sure,
definitely is a little more dated, but
slightly. Star Wars is a great example of something that has, even the original version is aged impeccably. Like, yeah, you guys are right. There are little areas where you could tell, like, definitely they didn't have this special effects to quite pull certain things off in the 70s.
Like
but I'm always
more ships in the battle, more X-wings in the battle, because you saw less X-wings in the original, and they added digitally added more to make it look like there's 4 or 5 squadrons.
Well, I know that I am still amazed at the quality and level that they were able to bring the enhanced colors of the like the shooting that happens in the very beginning, and the part where the Jawas end up like shooting R2-D2 with whatever that it was they shot him with.
The stun.
The stun, the electricity that surrounded him at that point in time. I remember that being a hell of a lot less colorful. So every time something happened, I pointed it out, and I guess I was annoying Tammy, but I was like, that didn't happen. That didn't happen. Yeah, this didn't happen.
Egregious thing, and I think most people can agree on this, is
Han shot
changing
first.
Han shot first.
that
in
was,
the special editions they change it so Greedo shoots first and Han like does that
looks like
awkward
they shoot at the
dodge.
Same time. But yeah, Han definitely shot first. Han was
he just always blew him away originally.
He was gonna let him go.
I think
Han's like I'm taking care of this motherfucker. And I love how he just shoots him, walks over to the bartender, flips some coins, says sorry about the mess, and walks out. It's just.
I think they made a bit too much fuss about Han shooting Greedo because it was obvious that Greedo was going to shoot as well. So.
Well, in the original version, Han just straight up blows him away, and it's integral to his character development because it paints him out as a dude that can be ruthless.
And he thinks, oh well, Han Solo would be like a hero, and a hero wouldn't shoot first, and blah blah blah. But
and it's in reality, he's a fucking criminal that they hire.
In a way, but he's a smuggler. He's not the typical hero.
He becomes a reluctant hero.
He didn't start out as a hero. He starts out as someone out for himself.
He's quite literally a criminal that they hire in a dusty, dirty-ass fucking dive bar.
He's basically a grease monkey who ended up being a pilot. So, except he got a little seedy along the way because he has no problems dealing with the scum of the universe,
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why the Greedo thing is important, because it shows that he's a straight up criminal, and he's down to just be ruthless when he needs to be.
He's an anti-hero at that point.
Well, he's in debt with Jabba, so that's why Greedo is after him to begin with. So.
Yeah, and then Greedo's like, oh, if you give me the money, I might forget I found you. And he's like, well, I don't have the money on me. And he's getting ready to, you can see him unbuckle his gun, he's getting ready to shoot him,
Greedo is basically a bounty hunter.
Yeah.
No, that reminds me of a story I just must tell you. Today when I watched this movie, it also refreshed my memory on the whole conflict between Han Solo and Jabba the Hutt being about Han having some sort of Jabba, and that reminded me of an incident I had back in 2015 when some guy I bought something from eBay. There was some mess with PayPal transaction. Basically, he couldn't find the transaction, and he started to claim that I hadn't paid him for the item, and I clearly did pay. It was he helped him find it. He couldn't find it, and eventually he sent debt collectors. And not even after me, but after a friend of mine who just received that title and who shouldn't have been involved in that whole mess. And now I never even saw that guy's face, but now I imagine him as Jabba the Hutt.
Well, and isn't the whole thing with the whole thing basically is that I think Han had to dump a bunch of spice or whatever.
Yeah,
that
he had to dump a shipment of spice because he was getting forwarded by the Imperials. I don't know why he didn't put them in his smuggler cargo like he did with them.
Oh, there might have been too much, you know.
Yeah,
it's possible that
why
his
didn't he
load
put
was...
some of it in there? I don't know. But anyways, he had to dump it, and that was the whole thing why Jabba, he had to okay Jabba, and Jabba's like, okay, for 20%, I'll let you live and everything. And he's like, don't be greedy, I'll give you 15%. And Jabba's like, okay, I'll give you 15%. You know, you're good, but if you don't pay me, you know, there's no place you can hide.
Well, like spice is straight up drugs, basically.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
So
Well,
it's literally
which kind
smuggling drugs for a crime lord.
Which basically brings me back to me talking about Dune again, because Dune, the whole entire like universe was surrounded by this spice that was on that planet Arrakis, you know, and when people ate the spice, it like brought them to some level of highness, you know. So to me, that that comes into I don't know. That's where I kind of think like the universes kind of cross universes,
right?
You know, just a little bit.
I think it's more of like a case of overlapping sort of real world inspiration, you know, because when you think about it, like on Earth, you know, a lot of the colonization and people going out to different countries and setting up shop there back in the day was about spice. They always make the jokes about how, like, you know, the fucking white people went all around the world to conquer people for their spices, but we still have a hard time with spicy food, you know, or we don't know how to spice our food or season it, you know. It's obviously a stereotypical joke, but that's where it comes from. Is that, you know, we went to a lot of links. There's memes about it and shit. We went through a lot of links to get spices here in real world Earth back in the day, you know. So spice being a huge export and something people are addicted to and will go through great lengths to get it is kind of like real world bleeding into Star Wars and Dune, I think, you know.
Oh yeah,
I always thought of it as drugs, though.
At this point in time,
you know.
At this point in time, I think we should talk about favorites now. So,
well, I didn't talk about my thoughts.
Oh, go ahead.
I loved it, and the original was done so well. Like I said, people saw it many times in the theater over and over again. People went on their honeymoon to go see Star Wars. The original lines was just so far back. There was a movie theater in Bronx where I lived, and I heard that it was so far back. It went all the way back to where the mall was, and there's a huge road, and then there's a huge parking lot in between where the movie theater was set back and the actual mall, and people was all the way back to the mall door in line for this movie from Star Wars when it first came out. And like I said, they showed people on their honeymoon and whatever, all these people going to see Star Wars. So it was such a big thing in 1977, and no one had ever seen anything close to it, you know, anything like it at all. And it was absolutely well done. And I agree that the visualization of the color, they added so much to it, and it just made it that much better. But even watching the original form was such great, and like Mo said, it's you know, it still stands up on its own, you know, without the digital, the 2 digital remasters and the added scenes. But yeah, it's just awesome. You know, I absolutely thought the production was great. You know, I don't know how much money they had, but whatever they had, they used perfectly. So yeah, it's definitely awesome. And at some point, I want to talk about the score. I know we've touched on it a little bit.
Definitely, we can talk about the score. The score was put together by John Williams. The entire score, in fact, and
Yes.
I think it is a phenomenal score. Although I personally prefer the Empire Strikes Back music. I just love that dun 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 dun.
I know people that have that as a ringtone for like their wives or mothers or stuff like that. It's pretty funny.
But to be honest, the score of the Star Wars trilogy is phenomenal all around. To be
not
honest,
just the trilogy. He does the sequel, the prequels and the sequels. So he's done them all. You know, John Williams has been able to work on all of them. You know, and it's great. I mean, he's just. I think it's his.
I think that they are definitely as epic as the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Music.
I think it's more epic. I think it's more epic, but I mean, maybe it's my bias. I mean, I love Lord of the Rings. Don't get me wrong. Absolutely love Lord of the Rings, but I'm a little more biased towards Star Wars. So yeah, I just think it's the best score ever, and the best like I love rock music, and I love when I hear certain songs and movies, really enjoy that. But for non-rock, like a classical music, it was just perfect. Like every song, everything he played fit the mood perfectly. It set you into that mood, whatever it was, just like you were there. It was like
it was one of those movies that you could tell the music was there.
Oh yeah.
Of
You
course,
could tell it was there, but it also fit in the background so that you could watch the movie and kind of forget about the music a little bit, but it's always there to set the scene without you even thinking about it. Like you don't have to think about it and say, oh, that song was here or that song was in the movie. Like you don't know the names of the songs. You just know that it's there. It's the best background music ever because you know it's there, but it doesn't overcrowd. It doesn't take away from the movie at all. It adds.
It melds perfectly. Star Wars is a great example of films that they'd still be great with a different score, but the score is an integral part of it. That John Williams music is like
Star Wars with a different score would
it'd still be fun, but it would lose something significant
but
without
definitely
that.
would not be quite as iconic with that music because that music just sets that mood perfectly.
Well, let us go into favorite scenes. So, Boris, why don't you tell us if there was a favorite scene from this particular Star Wars movie, what would it be?
Well, there are quite several scenes I like here. For example, I liked when they were interrogating Leia and she wouldn't give them information no matter what they tried to do to her to get her to say what's
Rebels
the word in
bases.
English? Their
The
base
rebel
or
base.
what's yeah. No matter what they do, she wouldn't give in. That was a part I like, and also I'm sorry. Also, all the interaction between R2D2 and C3PO, that was fun, and between Han and Leia, their conflicts between each other. Basically, a lot of that, those things that I couldn't remember from earlier, but now I refreshed my memories on them after seeing this movie after many years.
Just out of curiosity, Boris, when you watch this, do you watch it in English or do you watch it in?
Yes, I watch it in English with Croatian subtitles, and
Oh, okay.
today my focus was kind of bad because I'm sick after all this time. COVID-19 has finally gotten
He's
to
got the
me as
Rona.
well.
Uh-oh.
I'm
He's got
sorry,
the
what did
Rona.
you say?
I said you got the Rona.
Sorry. Yes, yes. That's that's why I. Damn. That's why
Well, I hope you
I
get better
did.
soon, bud.
I hope so too.
Thank you.
Yeah, get better soon.
Thank you.
But this is how much this guy
you all.
loves our talks. He has the COVID and he still comes on and talks about Star Wars. So
that's
gotta love his dedication.
that's how cool Boris is. I mean, he was telling me that he might not feel comfortable coming on, but I'm glad that you decided
Yeah,
to.
I'm definitely glad to hear.
Oh, thank you. Well, actually, no, it's not that I thought I wouldn't be comfortable. It's just that I wasn't sure how my health condition was going to progress. Like, if my temperature had gone higher, if I had a strong fever, then maybe I wouldn't have been able to do this. But fortunately, I was able to. I just may not have been as focused as I should have been, so apologies for that.
Weirdly, I
No,
kind of do like watching movies when I have a fever, though, because your mind's kind of bizarre. In the midst of like the fever dream, you watch some fucked up movie and it just feels weirder, you know?
Yeah, I can imagine.
but in any case, Mo, why don't you tell us? Is there a favorite scene that you like from Star Wars?
Oh, it's impossible to choose. I mean, I'm partial to all of them. You know, this is one of those movies where definitely I don't know if I could choose just one. I guess, the stuff that's a bit scary always appealed to me as a little kid because I was like a little horror nerd,
Mhm.
and there's several like the trash compactor scene or
Darth Vader
where
showing up.
friggin' like that dude gets his arm cut off. Obviously, that stood out to me because his arm's off. Like that's awesome. But the one that stands out to me that spooked me quite a bit as a kid too. In addition, I do like the interrogation droid. That thing always looked gnarly. You don't really get to see it do anything, but it's like got all these implements of torture. And that, of course, leapt out a little fucking horror kid as well, because it's like, oh, what's that thing gonna do? But
I
the
was a
one
horror
that
kid, but I don't know. It just
the one that
I guess I was
surprisingly
too jaded.
maybe the one that surprisingly spooked me out too was when Ben first shows up and scares off the sand people, and that part still is
Really?
just such a neat scene
Oh,
to me, because he's making that weird noise and like
Scared you
oh
too, huh?
yeah, and when he telepathically manipulates the stormtroopers, that was amazing too.
oh yeah, that's classic. I mean, that's one of those super iconic moments, so but yeah, the Ben showing up and scaring off the stormtroopers spooked me as a kid, and I still find it pretty weird. That noise that he's making is like insane.
No, I was more referring to the scene when he got the stormtroopers to let them pass and not realize that those actually were the droids they were looking for.
Oh yeah, use the Jedi mind trick.
Oh yeah, it's classic, man. And Alec Guinness has that voice that makes his lines really fun to imitate.
Yeah.
These are not the droids you're looking for. Move along.
Kroll, is there a favorite scene that you could take from Star Wars?
Now,
Film?
you guys were doing yours. I was trying to think about it because normally I'm like, oh, favorite scene, boom, I'll say it with any movie. This movie or these, is one where I say the whole thing, the whole damn thing. But I'll have to go back to when I was a child. My favorite scene was when Luke and Leia swung across in the ship on the cord that he got from his belt. That scene was just really awesome to me as a kid. So I'll have to
Mhm.
go with that as my favorite, only because as an adult, it's impossible. I just love every single scene in the entire movie. You know, I mean, another special note is probably hand running into the stormtroopers and them running away
Yeah,
from him, and then him,
classic.
you know, running into the like a whole bunch of the stormtroopers, and he stops running away from the other way. It's just absolutely hilarious. So I'll point that out. But I mean, the whole movie is basically a favorite scene. So,
Dude,
but
that swinging
and
across the chasm really gets kind of overlooked too as one of those things
yeah,
that
it is a really
it-
awesome scene.
it's
Now,
awesome, and it's like it roots it. It gets overlooked. It was one of those scenes that like roots it in the inspirations of Star Wars. Like that totally is like some swashbuckling shit, you know.
I
Yeah,
swear in the first time that I saw it, I swear that Luke actually did not land straight on his feet. He actually almost fell backwards and Leia
and
pulled him back
yes,
up.
you're right. You're right. I think that's something that they changed it up a little bit.
Yeah,
That's
because
a bummer.
he swung across in this version and landed on his feet, but I seem to remember him almost falling backwards, and she pulling him up, and they were like almost close to breathiness, like in each other's face, which is why I always refer to this as like the first inklings of ancestry. So, so.
I knew it all along. Now, I have to mention the Vader scene only because I mentioned it earlier, but I wasn't here. When I was 4, that scene scared the hell out of me. Darth Vader just scared me. Like I was like straight up like, I don't know who this guy is, what he is, but damn, he's scary. I felt like he was gonna just come right out of the movie and get me. So that's how I felt about that scene as a 4-year-old seeing it for the very first time. I just wanted to mention that again because it was such a great scene.
As for me, I would have to say any moment with the two droids. Those are classic. I mean, to me, those two, those two are what make these some bro movies. You know, because those two,
the first romance.
Yeah, it's the greatest romance of the Galactic Empire. You know, so but just any time those two get together. Is comical, and the fact that he'll insult him and his mother and everything like that, it's classic. But I love the choking scenes with Vader for some reason.
Yeah.
I love it when he just yeah. I mean, the first one is this commander on the rebel ship where he just chokes him in midair, you know.
Yeah,
and
he asks him a question and then kills him before he can answer.
Correct. And then the second one was one of his own commanders, and
he was mocking the Force. He's like, you know, your sad devotion to the ancient religion hasn't helped to conjure up the stolen plans and blah blah blah. And he's just going off, and Darth Vader's like, like, shut the fuck up, bitch.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Like, James Earl Jones is definitely awesome with that voice. You know, it's just everything he said. He doesn't have a ton of lines, but everything he said is just so impactful and to the point. You know.
Oh yeah,
so great.
But I have to admit that I also like the whole the Han Solo and Leia moments too. I mean, the fact that they're insulting to each other down
just like R2 and C-3PO.
Correct.
We already know that you love each other, even though they're always insulting. But they're more like a brother. Whereas you can tell that Leia and Han, there's definitely sexual tension right away.
Well,
you know, and
animosity at first.
Well, yeah, animosity, sexual tension, same thing.
I wonder if R2 and 3PO ever take like oil baths together and like plug into each other.
Not to mention all the holographic sex that R2D2 must be having in his mind with Leia there. They're stuck in.
I'm sure he ran back that recording a few times. You know,
his head going inside her.
You guys are gonna make me choke to death on this series.
Well, there are definitely a lot of erotic moments that were unsaid and unthought. So I mean, there is definitely a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, the tantalizing tale of lust in space.
The fact that we've thought of these things is the fact that this movie brings out fantasies in all of us young Jedi Knight wanderers. You know,
especially Empire, dude, with that bikini.
Or Sith or Empire if you're the evil side, you know.
Well, yeah. If you really get into those pin-up calendars of Darth Vader in that bikini leopard outfit, you know.
Oh, I don't know.
True
Tarkin
story, dude. When I was a
kinda
kid,
sexy.
my mom. Well, I wasn't a kid; I was a teenager. But like, my mom was talking about the only time she ever saw a Playgirl magazine. She flipped it open like it was one her sister had, and there was a dude in a Darth Vader mask with just like his wiener out or something. I don't know why she chose to put that image in my mind when we were talking about this, but yeah, I guess it scarred her for like life, dude. She was like,
That's
Darth
fucking
Vader, what are you
doing? Is that how she came to like Darth Vader?
Well, we were fans of the movie, and I assumed that she was beforehand, you know. So I'm sure it was like just disturbing and intriguing. I'm not gonna speculate on whether she liked it or not, but it definitely it stuck with her for long enough to tell me about it way later in life.
And you can't talk about Star Wars without some of the many different films that were influenced by this. Like I could definitely think that Eddie Murphy's The Nutty Professor was influenced by this.
Well, actually, probably the original Nutty Professor with what the fuck's his name? Jerry Lewis.
Oh, you're talking about Jerry
Lewis, yeah. So, because the Jerry Lewis,
I like that one too.
I think it's better.
I like that one too.
It's definitely better, but yeah, I like the Eddie Murphy one. But you know.
Science fiction as a whole too was just changed by Star Wars. I mean, you can even see it in what most people would I've never considered them competing franchises because they're two sides of this coin.
I seem to remember
Star Trek.
I seem to remember the Dragon movie, Reign of Fire.
Oh, that was a great movie.
That's a good one.
The main dude was telling the story of Star Wars to the kids. If I remember correctly.
It's been a while, so I need to revisit that one. I really liked Ring of Fire, but my point was like even Star Trek was influenced directly after this by Star Wars. If you look at the Star Trek movies, yeah, the leap forward they take in special effects is to be expected because they're making feature films and not TV episodes. But a lot of it is very closely Star Wars inspired. Like it takes on more of a complex aesthetic to the special effects that they maybe wouldn't have done had Star Wars not been a thing. I always found that interesting.
Very true. I think I think that Star Trek kind of has always had like some either camaraderie as well as some fast being the other side of everything, you know.
Yeah.
There's always going to be your diehard Star Wars fans.
That's right.
And there's always going to be your diehard Star Trekkies. And there's always going to be those central people who like just about everything about both.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at these days. As a kid and a teenager, I definitely didn't like Star Trek.
As long as you don't mix the two up in front of those people, not pisses
Yeah.
them off.
We get very angry.
Although Fanboys is a very good like representation of that. The movie Fanboys.
Yeah, that was a good one.
sorry.
You love it, Kroll. It's fucking amazing.
I
I mean, obviously,
Fanboys?
it's a slightly exaggerated for comedic effect version of like the rivalry, but it's in there.
And of course,
it's
I
basically-
do have to talk about Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back.
Oh yeah, I mean,
we're gonna get sued.
such good stuff. And I mean, obviously, we wouldn't have Spaceballs without Star Wars. You know, it's like
Yep.
an integral part of that.
I love Spaceballs. They comb in the desert, comb in the desert.
Well, Battlestar
Hello.
Galactica was basically made to just cash in on Star Wars. So it's like if Star Wars didn't exist, we wouldn't have eventually got the superior remake of Battlestar Galactica
No,
they did in the early 2000s.
It's
Well,
funny,
and Babylon
when I was
5.
young, there was a few shows I watched, but for the most part, most movies, science fiction, I didn't watch. Because the way I felt as a kid, I've seen the best, I don't need to see anything else. Star Wars was the pinnacle of science fiction. You can't get better than that, so why bother? I mean, I ended up loving sci-fi later and watching a ton of it, but when I was a kid, I was very, very much just Star Wars only for sci-fi. So TV shows I watched, Battlestar Galactica.
Oh yeah, and it's definitely one of those.
And Buck Rogers.
See,
and
to me, the first science fiction film that I ever
Lost in
watched
Space.
was
I'm talking about me.
Yeah, Lost in Space was a very good series into the
I used to have a
uh,
bunch of ships from Battlestar Galactica, Lost in Space and stuff, and all those ships became Star Wars ships because
Yeah.
I didn't have enough Star Wars toys, so I had to make more. And
I
you know,
will-
so
As far as science fiction films go, the first one that I really got into was Forbidden Planet,
Another good
and that was a phenomenal movie once they recolorized it and whatnot. It was one of the films besides the first Men in the Moon, H.G. Wells, that kind of like somewhat creeped me out, you know. And as far as other science fiction films, everything else kind of pales in comparison. Although Godzilla, the original Godzilla, that one,
Star Wars.
these were films that made leagues of stride before they even got into the Star Wars universe, you know. So, but
Well, I was 4 when I saw Star Wars, so basically, I mean, I might have seen sci-fi before that. I don't remember it, and you know, so basically, I'd say Star Wars was my first real sci-fi, and you know, that's why it set the bar so high.
I would say another one that fairly is impressive is the original War of the Worlds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's solid.
So to me, Forbidden Planet and War of the Worlds, those two are like my top 2 science fiction films from like the 1950s that pretty much stand out. Oh, and The Day the Earth Stood Still. I cannot forget that one, especially Klaatu's speech.
not Star Wars though.
I'm just mentioning other phenomenal films.
Oh, I know. I mean, Close Encounter of the Third Kind, Alien movies. I mean,
That one was
you know.
okay, especially when I actually did go and visit.
I'm
the
talking
Death-
about the original Close Encounters, not the remake.
I love
I'm
the
not talking
original
about the remake. I'm talking about the original.
I know. I'm just for you know that I'm talking about.
Close
the
Encounters
original.
is an acquire. It's one of those ones where it's like you either like it or you don't, or you just don't know how to feel about it.
I
you
just
know?
like the music, honestly. The dun, 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 dun. But I did actually go and visit the Devil's Tower in real life.
Fuck yeah.
And that was kind of cool. My dad was like kind of like historic dude whenever it came to like having us on vacation. Everything had to have a reason. So we visited the Devil's Tower. We didn't climb it or anything, but there was someone who was stuck up there
Yeah, that dude that parachuted onto it, right?
Yeah.
And then I think the other dude climbed it and then couldn't get back down. That might be the dude you're talking about.
Yeah,
I think the dude
I
who
was there.
parachuted onto it just jumped
I
off.
think I was there during that day that happened. So
That's crazy, dude.
But in any case, I think that's pretty much it. I think we've covered all the bases.
Yeah, we did it justice. I think.
Except for figuring out where the Empire actually had their base, but that's okay. We don't need.
They didn't have a base. They were all over the place. Not to be a poet and know it. But yeah, they basically didn't have like one base. They were just everywhere. And I guess once they built the Death Star, that was basically the central base. If you really want to say they had a base, it would have been the Death Star, because it housed. I mean, you forget that they weren't just bad guys on the Death Star. They were just normal people. They were janitors and
that whole clerks conversation.
Like we talked about the stormtroopers, where the stormtroopers weren't all necessarily bad. They were forced into it. So there was a lot of innocent people that died there, but. And this is always the debate where people that love the Empire say, "Oh, well, who killed all these innocent people?" Okay, yes, all these innocent people died, but in comparison to how many planets the Death Star can blow up, and entire billions of people that they already did destroy, then that was the lesser of two evils, in my opinion.
True enough.
Yes, innocent people did die that day, and in some places, Luke is not the hero; he's the villain. And I can definitely see that side of it, but compared to the Death Star, no. That's my 2 cents on that.
Alrighty, so I think we'll do our outro. So Boris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, aside from recovering from COVID now, I'm an unpublished writer, as some of you may already know. I wrote a horror novel that I aspired to publish, and so on. I'm unemployed right now, and yeah, of course, I do these video discussions with you guys. Sometimes I watch movies and shows, and I like to edit videos and do stuff in Photoshop and so on.
Pretty much what you're saying is that you're an avid fan of films, basically.
Kind of, yeah.
What about you, Mo? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, my name is Mosley. I run a channel called
A channel
called Drunken Master Studios, where I
and he's not drunk now, folks.
No, not at all. Where I do a show called Full Moon Madness. It covers all the films from Charles Band's Full Moon Entertainment, or features as they call themselves these days. So lots of Full Moon content over there if you're into that. We're also going to have a bunch of new monthly segments coming out, one of which that's going to cover a lot of independent horror films and the like. So look forward to that as well. Pop on over there if you're into it.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's going to be good times, dude.
And at some point, we're definitely going to cooperate with Dr. Mordred.
Yeah, we got to get on watching that together and rock a discussion for it. I think you'll really enjoy it, man.
Yeah. That's definitely something I want to see. And there was a few other films that were based on superheroes too that I'd like to catch as well.
Alrighty. Kroll, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm disabled, so I don't work. So basically what I do is watch movies, TV shows, play video games, read books, all the fun stuff. And I do all of that pretty much simultaneously because I like to keep my mind busy since I don't work. So that's basically what I do. And then I come on these podcasts, this one and the other one, Inside Movies Galore. And I talk about the movies I watch. And I love doing that. I've always loved talking about movies I watch.
So have I. I mean,
on this one, Star Wars, I can never stop talking about Star Wars. It's watched any of the movies or TV shows or any of it. So I mean, if you really want a discussion for a long time, talk to me about Star Wars.
Well, I'm glad that I was actually able to cover the first one, since we haven't covered the first one on the show, on our other show. The first one that we had to cover was the Star Wars Holiday Special. So, which I know that many people think that is part of the Star Wars universe, and I'm glad we covered it. But
It's
I
not
really
canon,
would have rather
but
covered Star Wars before covering the Star Wars special. But
yeah,
I was
It's
kind of
canon,
forced into
bro.
that. I was
It's
forced
canon.
into that. I was forced into that. So, but
Itchy's out there. He's watching that holographic porn.
But
Yeah.
in any case, I'm David Straggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore, but which is another channel where we go on and discuss various levels of films, and we have a good adventure discussion on those said films, and I think we have a great time doing that. But I also moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where I go on and upload videos of my recent pickups. I go on about my own thoughts and on various films and levels of films that are out there. But I started a film discussion group with my good friend Boris here. And it's kind of turned into like a discussion of all films, not just independent films. And I love being able to do that because I'm sure some of these films you would not be able to see if not for some of us intellectuals here.
Indeed. Well, maybe
Our
I would have
intellectuals
been.
have chinners.
Maybe I would have been able to see them, but I wouldn't have discovered them to begin with.
Well, I was just thinking that Mo had discovered a new species that had to do with Channing Tatum, and scanners. So,
I wouldn't kick him out of bed for eating crackers. I'll tell you that, man.
Oh man!
But I hope that you, ladies and gentlemen, as an audience, have enjoyed the film adventures on both channels that we have been having. So I'm glad we were able to cover Star Wars in our own way, and hopefully you just go out and see the film yourself. And if you want to grow an attachment to it, go right ahead. If you want to hate on it, go right ahead too. Just enjoy the movie. But thank you for listening. Have a great day, evening, or morning, wherever you are. And
if you hate on it, I will find you.
we will be returning to the universe next week as we talk about the film that is technically before this one, which is called Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith. So stay tuned. We're going to have some exciting film discussions coming your way. And thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you all.
Bye.
May the Force be with you all.
May the Force be with you.